Sorry, behind the.
You want the?
Not just yet. Sorry, but
Oh yeah. Okay.
yes, we're behind the bar last night. He had one of those things where you slot over the back of your laptop, and 2 screens that come out.
Oh yeah.
It's really cool.
It was like I looked at that. I was like, that'd be really awesome. It was like $500. I'm like going, I don't think I need it that bad. I was like, that's a neat idea, not necessary.
And it probably kills your battery as well.
Yeah, that's probably true too. Yeah. All right, so okay, you've got your screen. Okay, so you're showing Agenda 3. Okay, Agenda Day 3. Okay.
We have a second one.
It's like, yeah, the one I left it over there. One there, one's out there, and the one here. Got this one. This is mine.
Right, you just figured that Tyler would be asking the most questions.
Exactly.
It's a good call.
Yes. Because I'm sure I'm going to get plenty.
Well, you got until lunchtime, so.
I'm feeling pressure to get through till lunchtime. So, but that's okay. I can adjust what I need to do based on my time.
You don't have enough time, or you think?
I don't think I'm going to have enough time because I think the conversation is going to cause it to stretch out more than I'm anticipating with what I'm doing. But that's okay because the ECO process for me is going to be okay. This is like the MPI process, but now we're just going to do it with a little bit more. So we should be fine.
I mean, if we need to go over until lunch, after lunch,
Well, we'll see. I say I'm pretty flexible. So yeah.
Okay.
We're all just not playing the music, and make it louder and louder.
I told Carl, just give me the high sign. Exactly. All right. I'll be looking. 2 more minutes. All right. A couple stragglers still coming in to sit down.
Sorry?
It's a couple stragglers coming in and sitting down still. Traffic. It's a heavy microphone.
It is.
I'm thinking, I'm standing here for like 3 hours. I'm gonna be holding this thing all day. After a while, I'll be just like, can you come just prop this up? Michael, yeah,
Just stand there.
No.
You wanna prop stand?
No. Yeah, because but no, it's okay.
You're gonna start with. You're gonna fight for your right to
They're
party.
like, yeah, because I'm gonna be walking around a lot. So, okay, okay, good. It's still off. Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
There we go. Okay, folks online, can you hear me? Okay.
Maybe not.
Folks online, can you hear me?
In here.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so obviously yesterday we had some great discussions and interactions and so forth, so I want to keep that up today. So this morning we're going to be going through PLM with Brian. He'll take us right up to lunch, after which we'll have a small session on sales and purchasing, and then we'll roll into a team building exercise with Adriana, sorry, at the end there, we call her. And then we'll resume back into sales and purchasing afterwards. As I say, please do keep the interaction going. Any questions, issues, do call them out as we go. And again, we'll be tracking along in reality as we go. Okay. Any questions before we start the day? Okay. On to you, Brian.
All right. Sounds good.
Take control.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And let me go ahead and share my screen so I can start to see that. I'll go share. Okay, so yeah, welcome everybody, and this is be a little more of a presentation to begin with, and then we'll start to dive into the actual and processes and stuff like that. We'll talk about what the requirements are, and so to start off with, actually, I did provide this little presentation, hopefully to give you a better understanding. I suspect the majority of people don't know too much about PLM or what it does, what the purposes or purposes are. So this is going to hopefully give you a nice high-level understanding, as well as start to dive into more of the weeds as we get later through the morning, and we should be able to kind of talk about some of the stuff. So let's go ahead and introduction. Okay, so to start off with, since today is Valentine's Day, then I dug up some old memes of mine from like 20 years back, and as you can see, we have something that you guys. Does anybody know who Don McMillan is? Who? Don McMillan is a comedian, but he was a Silicon engineer. He was a software engineer that he worked in Silicon Valley, and if you ever like these kind of things, he does PowerPoint presentations for his jokes. So this is very common. So here's one thing, and then we have something like this. So like I say, these are old, okay? But they're as relevant today as they were the day they were created, right? Okay. So to kind of break the ice a little bit, as you can see, I'm wearing my red shirt. I'm going to tell you this little something. So there's this pirate ship out in the sailing the high seas, and as the lookout in the crow's nest says, "Captain, enemy ship on the horizon." And the captain turns to his first mate and says, "Bring me my red shirt." And okay, bring the shirt. They attack and they win the day, sink the enemy vessel. Everything's fantastic. And so after the battle, then the first mate comes to the captain and says, "What's with the red shirt? Why did you want the red shirt?" He says, "If I were to be shot, the crew would not see the blood. They would continue to fight." And so first mate was impressed. He's like, "Oh, that's awesome. That's really neat." Next day, they're out fighting. I go, they're out sailing again. And the lookout in the crow's nest yells down again, "Captain, 20 enemy ships on the horizon." Captain looks to his first mate and says, "Bring my brown pants." So, anyway, that's that little levity at the beginning. That'll make it interesting, all right? Okay. So anyway, okay. So let's go on to more interesting things. So to begin with, we'll have obviously this presentation. For the most part, we're going to talk about PLM in general at the beginning. Then, as we start to get deeper into more of the details of what PLM does, then we're going to start talking more, and I'll probably go back and forth a little bit to kind of see how things go. Like I say, kind of a little bit loose on that. Then we'll dive into a new part request. I figured that would be the best way to start. Start as creating a new component, and have that be the starting point of what we're going to do. And then we'll work into actually new product introduction, and then we'll deal with that. Once we get to that, we'll take a break, and then we'll go into the ECO process. What I call is I took off the battleship because we're going to talk a little bit about that. I use that as my visual representation, but we're going to talk a little about that. Okay. So anyway, who am I? Brian Rockwell. I'm project manager certified since 2007. So I'm going to thump my chest a little bit here, just kind of give you an idea who I am, because obviously I'm here, might as well. Chemical engineer from Rutgers University. I mean, you guys see me walking around my red R on, so that's why. Obviously, my colors too. Scarlet Knight is so red and black is fantastic, perfect for me. Let's see, and so I've been doing specifically I've been doing Infor PLM software implementation for about 15 years now. So I've got the experience, and I've been working in several industries. Numbers and in industries: automotive, aerospace, general manufacturing, electronics. There's a lot of stuff. It's like I could add one more, and that is speakers and EA stuff, right? Exactly. So anyway, so I have worked overseas quite a bit. My job takes me to many places, and I speak fluent English and Spanish, as a matter of fact. And I have two people in the room that can definitely test that, because I spoke to them in Spanish. So anyway, not that I'm going to do this in Spanish, okay? Don't get upset. Don't be concerned. This can all be in English, okay? So anyway, okay. So let's talk about what is PLM. And a lot of people say, they're like, well, yeah, it's software. Actually, it's not. It's actually a business strategy designed to manage your product development. That's really what PLM is: product lifecycle management. So what exactly does that entail? So if we talk about that, it really does handle from your concept of where you come up with an idea all the way through production, full production, and into retirement. That's really the cradle to grave concept, because you're taking that life cycle and saying, what is it that I'm going to do? Now, does it go through many iterations? Does it go through evolution? Absolutely. But that's what the software will help to do, is to manage that process. Okay, that's really what the intent is. Okay, so what does it do? How does it do it? It handles the management of revision control documentation, revision control bills of material. That's part of the reason why it does that. Okay, so what is it? How does it do it? Well, it provides a systematic and procedural tools. And the vault is basically what they call the PDM, which is product data management, which is the actual information that's being stored as part of the product, for the product or the products. And then you have PLM, which is really much more around the life cycle, that L piece, which is how is that data managed? How is that data carried through from one step to the next? That's really what it's all about. Okay, so. Now, why? So why do we have PLM? Well, part of the reason is because it reduces your time to market. It reduces the amount of time from that concept stage of where somebody says, I have come up with an idea, and that idea, I want to start making money off that idea. And it really does, it comes down to how fast you get to market. So obviously you guys know very well, the iPhone came out years and years and years back, right? First to market. Was it the best smartphone? Absolutely not. It was the first iteration, but it was the only one on the market. So, who won? Steve Jobs, right? But it was because that was a product that made it to market, and people had never seen anything like it. So obviously you corner the market in a sense with that. So that's obviously critical. Biamp has the same concept, right? There's competitors out there, great. But if you come up with a new idea and that concept, you're able to get to market, you're able to produce it faster than anybody else, you win. You win. Okay? So what does it also do? It improves your consistency for your product by giving you certain procedural controls and management, so that you can do that every single time. So you're not trying to almost reinvent your process for every single time you want to create a new product. You have the process in place. Now the process may be somewhat adaptable to maybe the type of product that you're working with, but you have the procedure in place, and then you allow that procedure to guide how you go through the development process. That's really the idea. Okay, what does it also do? Because of the fact you have this process in place and you're able to provide these controls and checks and balances within the process itself, then you're able to improve your first final product. And that reduces the time you have to spend on your changes or modifications because maybe something went wrong. Okay, really that's the intent. Okay? So, also, it provides a single source of truth for your product data. Now you're not having to search for things in different locations. It's all found in one location. That's the intent at least. The intent is to be able to maintain your documentation in one spot. Okay, and the last one is, here's the second one. So standardizing, streamlining process scores, that's ISO 9001 compliance. And obviously there's a lot of quality goes on. I'm sure Peter loves that type of stuff, right? Because it gives, so just a quick side note. ISO 9001 does not tell you how to create your processes. It says, if you have a process, you use it. That's what it says. You generate your own process. It's not going to tell you what to do. It's going to tell you that you need to have one and that you adhere to that process. You maintain your own QMS. Okay? That's really what it's about. Okay. And I think the last one is, of course, this is specifically for PLM, and that is, of course, you maintain a connection with your ERP system, and you're able to maintain a bi-directional connection that allows you to send information to LM and receive information from LM. And that's really the saving grace for what PLM does right now, is that it allows you to have that communication. All right, so that's it. And okay, there we go. So possible link to, I threw this one at the very end. So possible link to a PCS project. Well, PCS projects where there's some interesting things that are being done by Infor over the past couple of years that is relatively new, of being able to use the task capabilities that PLM has against the WBS that's inside of a project. So you have your work breakdown structure, and then you can maintain, when you complete these certain tasks in PLM, that it'll apply that to your project, for your project managers, and for data, data mining and stuff like that, for being able to do your analytics and stuff like that. That's really what the intent is. That's still questionable, not quite so well known yet. So, okay.
Brian?
Yes?
It seems like we've heard there's two types of projects. Is PCS like the capital projects?
Capital projects are TP projects.
Okay.
Projects. PCS are the smaller ones that are used typically for managing products and things like that, where the PP would be something like a portfolio or something that's a huge thing, that's a huge undertaking. Multi-million-dollar thing, that's what it is. My understanding, and I'll definitely defer to any one of the other consultants to explain that better than me. Carl has his hand up.
Well, maybe it's about the microphone. I had explained one time, it's really easy. TP projects are like building an airport. It's subcontract, you're creating concrete, et cetera, et cetera. PCS, you're building an airplane. Easy enough. Let me know how that works out, right?
All right.
I'm planning to implement PCS projects. I think I spoke the other day.
We're not making buildings.
Yeah, and I think please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you can only have one type of project that you just get NL at one time. So you go with PCS or TP, depending on which one you want. Because I think, from what I understand.
You can do both, but what PCS inside of TP cannot, what you can put the airplane in the airport, you can't put the airport in the airport. And you understand that, correct?
I think you went further.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I got nods from the cash, so therefore we're good. Okay. So now let's start looking at what PLM actually does. Obviously, we talked about this at a high level. Let's not look at it what it actually does. Okay. So how is PLM different than ERP? And this is kind of the reason why I went with this is kind of why JB did his thing too, right? Because he says, look, we're not so procedurally driven as you would see inside LN. And so that's why let's talk about this. So it's more process driven than it is really transactional data. There's not data that's pushing things. It's actually using the process as the vehicle. And I don't want to talk too much about that because I have another slide about that one. Okay, it's usually, so be more flexible in the management data because it's not quite so rigid or regimental in what you're trying to do. It's not like saying, okay, a sales order, a purchase order, it's the same instrument every time. The data may change, but it's all the same thing. In PLM's terms, you go, a product is a product, right? I mean, how many different types of products are there? I mean, we're sitting around a room full of things, these are all products. And how can one product relate to another product? We can't, because the process to create that product is completely different. And we don't want to dictate to anybody how they're supposed to build their own products. You guys know how to build your own products. Nobody else knows that. So we don't want to tell you how to build your products. We want to give you the tools necessary so you can do that. Okay, that's really the intent. Okay. So, and here we go. So we have my process, which is basically the bus. That's the process, okay? And then I have my data, which actually is the passengers. And you can collect your passengers as your bus is going down the road, which is your template. So you create your template, and that process template is how are you get from point A to point Z. That's really what it's all about. And once you build that process, the process is the actual vehicle that actually carries that information. That's really what it's about. Okay. Any questions on that? I'm trying to use some simple ways of illustrating how this works. Okay. So let's talk about the process management portion. Okay. So it is task-based, as I was mentioning before. So task-based means that you receive a task. That task is given to you to do something, okay? Now, what you actually have to do may be completely outside of PLM even. It doesn't necessarily have to be, I have to go do this, inside PLM. No, it could be something in LN even. It could be something that's outside this. I have to go talk with the customer. I mean, it doesn't make that much difference what it is you have to do. It makes more difference about the timing and the effort that you need to complete that task. But at some point, you will have to complete that task so that it moves on to the next task. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a short time. Okay, so you receive a notification. You receive an email that tells you, hey, you need to go into the system and do something. Or, hey, you need to go outside the system and do something. But regardless, just going back to PLM and just saying, this is what I had to do. Approve. Okay, so again, approval steps, review steps, check steps, whatever you want to do it. Action steps where you actually have to do something, actually do something in the system, outside the system. It doesn't matter. So it's all driven by these tasks. And the system will not move forward until you complete your task. Okay? So happy path first. Okay. All right. So we have task actions, things that you can do with your specific task. So let's see, do I have them written down here? No. Okay, I won't talk about just yet. We'll get to do that. Okay, so iterative capabilities. So you have the capability of saying, okay, we got down to a certain point in the process, and then suddenly it was like, oops, we made a mistake. Instead of you having to cancel your process and start over again, you just say, send it back to the beginning, or send it back to a previous step, and have it continue through a second time. That's the iterative approach. It allows you to have this loop go through on this process. This is so powerful because it allows you to say, we don't get it right the first time all the time. But if we can reduce the amount of looping that goes on before it goes out the door, because then you're not talking about ECOs, right? Because then it's going to change orders and stuff like that. We want to try to avoid those as much as possible. Well, sorry, not avoid. We want to reduce those as much as possible because that's time and effort required from engineering, from manufacturing, from finance, from sales, or anybody else that has to go in and review stuff that happened because of the impact of the change, because of whatever reason that there was, that you had to do something. Okay? So by reducing those changes, in effect, improves the effectivity of your business. That's what it does. All right? Okay. Play-by-play commentary. So on a particular business process, you have the ability to add a comment. So you can add, say, something like, oh, hey, by the way, I was noticing that you have this in here. I think maybe we need to look at this. And you put that in as a comment on the business process. And if you want to back it up, you can attach files. I think I have that in here. Go ahead. So you can add files to that particular business process that it's not really something that is going to be rev controlled or it's going to be a part of the product. It's just something to be added. A classic example is, for example, if you were to create an ECO and you say, I'm going to add my red line drawing to the business process, because it's not really, it's the proposed changes, but once the changes are complete, that's part of the process. But I have a reference to that additional document that said, these are the changes, the dimensions that need to be changed for fit for function changes. This is what I have to do here. We have to move this hole here. We have to change this over here, and maybe add some or whatever. And that's part of the reason. That's part of the way that we can keep track of the, not necessarily the justification, but the reasoning behind things that are getting done. Okay. All right. So let's talk about these tasks. What are these tasks? So in the system, I have what's called a user task. This is the most simple, basic task, which means basically it's assigned to one person. I receive a task, I have to do something. Okay. Once I'm done, I perform some action with that task, and it moves on or goes back. Either way. Okay. The second one is a group task, and a group task can be a group of one person or a group of many people. And you can choose then with this group task what you want to do, whether you want to have it be assigned to the group leader and have the group leader delegated to someone inside the group, okay? Or you can have it be sent to everybody inside the group and somebody just says, I'll go do it. I'll just take the task and I'll perform the action, whatever needs to be done. So the reason why we give these two options, if you will, is because you want to give each business, you know your own business. And I've had many customers say, absolutely, we have to have it sent to the group leader, because if we don't send it to the group leader, the work is not going to get done. You know, people just leave it there. Other people say, no, our team is so proactive, we can go in there, and if it's assigned to a group of 5, somebody grab that thing within 2 minutes, and then it'll be out the door within 3. I mean, that's a possibility, right? You guys know your business, so you get to determine which way you want to go, okay? All right, notification obviously is just an email sent out. It doesn't stop the process. It just lets people know, hey, by the way, you know, we finished up our ECO. Go take a look at it. Hey, production, we just finished up some stuff. Why don't you go take a look and see what you've got, what you have. There's no action required by anybody. It's just the notification sends out, and you determine what you want to send in that email. Okay? So a check-in. So the way that PLM works is that it has a status, and that status is to, when you create a brand new item in the system, it's in what's called a draft state. So the draft state means that it's editable. People can go in and make changes to it. If you have the capabilities, obviously, if you have role capabilities, you can go in and make changes to it. So if you make changes to the item, as long as it's in that draft state, everything's fine. There's some caveats, obviously, because when we start dealing with the CAD piece and start dealing with locking and things like that, it's to prevent concurrency issues and stuff like that. And that's a little bit different story. But for the most part, if the item is still in a draft state, it is able to be modified. Okay? So the check-in step actually will say, okay, everything that's attached to this business process, everything that's on it, will then be checked in, meaning it's going to be set to a release status. So now we don't have the ability to just go make changes to it. Okay? With caveats, as always in the system, there's always some caveats. But for the general understanding, it will be locked down so that people cannot make changes to it. Preparatory, well, that's a checkout also. So you can take it for something that's checked, that's like a release item, and say, go to the next rep. So sorry about that. But then send to ERP. That's also an automated process, taking it from PLM and sending it across to LM. That's the intent. Okay. Sorry, Mahesh, was I in the way? You're doing this. Okay, so yeah, send the ERP up, of course, which is one of the most critical steps that we have in the system right now, because this is what is so important for the transfer of your data from engineering to project. And of course, we have a system step. Now, system step in the past has been really, really neat because it allows you, because for the most part, PLM was on-prem, and you could do SQL queries, you could do database triggers, and things like that. It was amazing, it was fantastic. Now that it's multi-tenant, it's not quite so important. There's only a few things you can do. So that's not, I'm only just putting it out there just to kind of give you an idea. There is a possibility to avoid the extensions, so to speak, and have the system kind of do some things based on what we could configure in the system. But again, that's why it's a special case. Okay? So any questions on this? Oh, you're sending your hand up. Okay? All right. So, what can we do when we receive a task? How do we manage that piece of it? Okay? Well, the first thing obviously is we can approve the task. Okay? We like what we see, or we did whatever task it was we were supposed to do, whatever actions we were supposed to commit, we were able to finish them up, and we just simply approve the task. What does it do? Moves on to the next task in the business process. That's the standard process, right? Happy path. Then, of course, the next thing is reject the task. Okay. Now, rejection is, so to give you an understanding of what that means. When you reject a task, you're saying something is wrong. Okay. Now, it may not necessarily mean this that you guys, you're not telling the guy before you suck. You're just saying, okay, there's something that needs to be fixed. Maybe you're missing some data. Maybe there's something in there that's not quite right. Or maybe you saw something that's like, whoa, wait a second. That's not going to work. Okay, that needs to be reviewed previously, by so-and-so. That's the real intent of a reject task. Now, what it does is it does not necessarily put it back at a previous step in the process. What it does is it creates a new task in the system as a special task on the side. It's almost like we took a detour and now we're standing over on the side. The process is over here. We pulled off the side of the road. Okay, our bus broke down, so to speak. Well, our bus is on the side, and we're just checking some stuff out. We're kicking the tires. We're looking under the engine, checking the oil, because we want to get back on the road again. Okay, so the rejection task is something where it gives you the ability for you to say, okay, well, I'm pausing the process, and we need to do something. And when you reject a task, you get the rejection reason. So you have to tell somebody why you're rejecting the task. Okay, that's the intent. So you're saying, look, I noticed there was something in here. I think we need to review this a little bit better. Or hey, by the way, you should have noticed that you completely missed documentation. Something like that. There's no limitation exactly what you have to say. That's really what it is. It's the fact you create this new rejection task. Okay. When you do receive that rejection task, let's say it was assigned to you, and you receive the rejection task, you look at it and say, oh, that's right. Sorry, foolish me, I forgot such and such. You fix it. And once you fix the problem, then you do what's called a forward of a task. Now, forwarding is a bit of a misnomer, because when you say forward, you have the ability to return that task. I like return better, but the return means something else. So you could return that task back into mainstream, so it's back to in progress, and you can put it at the beginning of the process, or you can put it at any step up into the point where it was rejected. So you can say, okay, that was, I walked up, I stepped off the side of the road, I fixed my thing, stepped right back on the road, and smooth sailing, business as usual. So that's what the forward is. So after that, you can't have the ability to say, I know we messed up, we have to go back through the entire process again. So the rejected forward says, the one that's rejecting just says, hey, we'll take it back to square one, let's just start over again, I'll put my comments in there, make sure people understand why I'm rejecting it, and then we'll just continue through, and we'll just get the next, round two, let's keep going. Okay, so that's what the rejected forward is. All right, so the next one is to reassign. pretty self-explanatory. Taking this time, you were assigned something, it's like, I'm not going to do this, I'll just give it to someone. Give it to Joe, give it to Brad, let them take care of it. Sorry, Brad. Not too specific.
I don't have access to anything. So.
That's right. Wow.
Thank you.
Sergeant Schultz. Okay. So reassign, pretty self-explanatory. Okay. So a skip and undo skip task is not typically an action that you do on your task, although it's in there. I don't know why it's in there. I would never sit there and say, oh, hey, by the way, I'm just going to skip this task. I don't want to have to go do this. Usually, skipping and unskipping tasks are done at the template level or at the beginning of the process when you're actually setting it up, because you know what you need to do and you know what doesn't need to be done. Because sometimes you may have something like a process that has lots and lots of tasks in there, and you say, this is a fast track process, for example, and I don't need to do this. I'll just skip them, and nobody will see them. Nobody knows that they're there. They won't. The system just keeps track of the fact that they're not needed. That's what that is. And so the take task or delegate task is what I was explaining about when you receive a group task, and you have to determine who's going to do the work. Whether you want to take the task yourself and do it yourself because it went to the group, or whether you're the group leader and you delegate the task to somebody in the group to go do the work. So that's what that means. Okay. Final one is return task, which means basically if I take the task as a group leader or group member, and then I realize, oops, I can't do this. I'm going to put it back to the group and let somebody in the group take the task again. Then you can do let's call it return. Okay. So that's for the most part the task actions. Any questions on that? Yes.
Current state in this process, there are. So current state in this process, there are simultaneous tasks that are happening simultaneously. So how will that work within PLM?
Perfect. We will get to that in a few more slides. Okay? Thank you.
This might be not a 10,000-foot question, but let's say you are going through your tasks and it gets to you, you're reviewing the document, and the document in the revision, says, oh, I've changed this dimension, but however, on the drawing, the dimension is not actually changed. And at this point, I'm assuming that your docs are locked and is the revision going to change if someone has to go back into that drawing and fix what they said they were going to fix?
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Corey. Okay. So usually you will not check in your item or your bill of material until you're sure that it's done. And that's why if you see somebody say, whoa, wait a second, they said they fixed this thing, I don't see the changes, reject the task, send it back to the engineer, and have them go back and do the work as they should. And of course you call them out, right? Nicely, nice words, okay?
Which I will say is opposed to what you currently do, which is reject anything. This hopefully will be a place where we can reject things and communicate through this tool all the time, saying, hey, by the way, we just need this right so that we can move forward.
Right.
We don't do that, we don't take accountability currently, but that's hopefully what will happen.
So Kyle says that hopefully with this we'll be able to be a little more civil about how we do our deal with some issues. All right. Go ahead,
Well, let's say it's in this. You got a couple of approvers. Is it going to change Rev though? Because if someone has to make a change that someone else had noticed, right? They have to check it back out, correct? And then make that change and then check the document back in. So let's say 2 or 3 things get noticed and they have to change it 2 or 3 times. Does that Rev skip from A to D?
Right.
Within the same ECO.
Understood. Okay. So what would happen is when, and like I say, we'll obviously be looking through this within the MPI and the ECO, we're going to see this exact thing when we see it actually in action. But to answer Corey's question, when the engineer completes their design work and they said, these are the changes that we recognize, this is what I was supposed to do, it goes through the vetting process. It goes to probably a peer review, or goes through a DFM, or goes through somebody that's going to actually look at this thing and say, does that make sense? Did they capture all of the changes that were proposed on this ECO? If not, return it back to the engineer. either through the rejection task or through the forward, reject them forward, send it back to the beginning and have them go back through the design process again. Say, hey, you should have done this. This is what was missing. And because it has not been checked in, meaning it has not been locked down, then you can continue to work on the same rev. There's no need to say, oh, that was rev 1, now we're going to rev 2, or A to B, B to C. No, there's not. It's not that much, and that's what you're reducing by having the process in place. Is that you're giving these people, you're giving different departments the ability to review things before you finalize everything.
Okay.
That's the intent. So you're giving, and I'm not just saying simply engineering and manufacturing. I'm saying finance. I might say, Corey as being a buyer, she'll want to say, okay, what's the impact? Or can I even source this part? The engineer says we have to replace a part. Can I even find that? How much is it going to cost? So all of those now become part of the process before it ever hits the shop floor. So that's the whole intent, is to reduce that by putting more eyes on the actual proposed change. You give people the ability to sound off first, second, analyze, and third, possibly reject and say, oops, I think we may have made a mistake. Yeah, we want to review this again. Now, obviously, people can go overboard in that and say, oh, wait. You have to have some level of, of understanding of what is considered a rejection reason, right? There has to be some rejection. And if it becomes really superfluous, then you're kind of like, what are we, how are we going to get our work done if we keep knocking up the engineers every time they can't get their job done? Well, that's honestly, that's going to be something but again, it's going to bring to light in time, it's going to bring to light the trending capabilities that the software is providing, because it's recognizing that a task, if we see that an ECO is taking 5 to 6 iterations of this going back and forth, you're going to say, wait a second, something's wrong with engineering, right? Something's not right. These guys are not doing their job. But if it comes down to where it says, okay, wait a second, we're getting to the end, and we have a lot of confusion about what we're actually looking at as far as the actual change is concerned, then we're going to say there's some other issues going on. Again, the metrics, the timing, and the amount of effort that's being put into something is going to start to drive what the pain points are in the process. And you'll start to recognize where we need to start to focus more attention on, because we're recognizing that something is falling down. Where we have a weak link here. And we need to just identify it and rectify it in some way. That's really what it's about. Okay? Any comments or questions on that? Mike?
Mike, put a mic notes up.
Yep.
All right. The skip, undo, skip task, is that something that can be assigned based on roles, so that a user doesn't have the ability to do that in their process?
Yeah, and that is true. Yeah. So everything inside the system is role-based. So the capabilities that you're given to certain people is going to absolutely be based on the role. So when they log into PLM, or to LM really, they are assigned their role. And that role could be project specific. I'm not even going to talk about projects, because that's going to confuse things too much right now. But that role is assigned to the person when you log in. Once you're in the system, you have certain capabilities and certain restrictions. And that is one thing that we can easily do. Yeah, you don't have the capability, because who's going to say, I don't want to do this, skip, right? Done. Exactly. If people can find ways around the system, they're going to exploit those loopholes, right? It's human nature, right? I don't have to do this. All right, I'm done. So, and the other thing that we would always stop would be the ability for people to complete a process prematurely. I mean, obviously, why would anybody want to do that? It's counterintuitive, but it's actually a feature in the system, regardless. Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. Moving on. Okay. So let's start talking about the business process itself. What does a business process? That's what we call them. Workflows in PLM terms of business process. I have to be very careful. I can't say BP anymore, because that's a business partner, right? In LN terms. So and I just call it out, a PLM business process, right? So business process, what are we doing here? So when you launch a business process, it goes and grabs the template for that particular business process request and says, this is what I'm going to start using in the system, okay? So it gets your task structure, your assignments, all that stuff, and that it applies it to this new business process that's being created. So once it's created, then it assigns the originator, which is the person who launched the process. That's given immediately, and it cannot be changed. The importance of the originator is that the originator is the one that's going to be notified if the process failed for some reason, or if, for example, there's some rejection. Usually the originator is like the first person to be selected by default. That can be changed, not necessarily has to be, but the originator cannot be changed. The responsible user is actually somebody that can be assigned and can have certain functions in the system, and we'll talk about that a little later on. Okay, so the next thing is that we have business process comments. I spoke about that a little bit. So you have the ability to add you can add text at any point from the beginning of the process that's its creation all the way through until it actually reaches completion or it's canceled. Either one. So once you get to that point, it stops. Okay, but you have the ability to add text to the business process. As well, you can add files, and I was talking about that, like your redline documents, redline drawings, and stuff like that. You can add other things. You can add maybe some vendor specs, say this is what I think that we should be doing, blah, blah, blah. Again, this is all like, Peter's saying, we can add, quality. This is your work instruction for what you're going to be doing. You could actually add that right into the business process, if necessary. I mean, the sky's the limit, so to speak, of what the capabilities are for what you're going to do with the process, as long as you understand that you have your bus, you have your passengers, and you have your road. So as long as you understand which way you're supposed to go, that's all that matters, right? Just don't let your buses crash into each other, that's all, okay? Anyway, so concurrent tasks. Now we go back to that. So what is a concurrent task? That's when the system branches into two or more different branches and has multiple processes or multiple tasks active at the same time. What the system will do is, before it comes back together into one, it's going to say, until every single task has been completed in each one of these little branches, I will stop and wait until they're complete before I move on to the next task. And we'll definitely see that in the process, okay? All right, so nested business processes. Okay, so this is something I've been talking about for a long time, okay? And that is, you don't have to have everything in one business process. It's not necessary. That's why I have my paddle ship. That's the Yamato. So it's because you have everything in one, then you lose a lot of the flexibility that you could potentially have. Okay? So let me explain that a little more. When you have a large process and there's some delay, meaning something happened, maybe there's some issue with a vendor or supplier, and then they couldn't do something. The whole thing screeches to a halt and waits until that task, whatever's been assigned, is complete. Well, then what about everything else that could have been done in the meantime? And what I'm trying to say is, so I'm thinking from a project manager perspective. You have what's called critical path. Critical path is the longest or the shortest critical path between point A to point Z, where you want to get the project done. And as long as everything else is kind of like either can be done simultaneously or doesn't impact the final timeline of that project. So if you have everything into one, the system doesn't know that maybe concurrent tasks could be done offline or could be done at other times. It just says, look, I'm told to wait until that task is done before I move on to the next one. Very procedural, right? Very regimental in that sense. So the system's not going to read your mind. So we have to either build our mind into the system, or we create what's called an aircraft carrier, which is basically, we want to have missions done on the side that can be done outside of the main process, that it won't affect it, but at the same time, at some point there has to be a checkpoint. We say, okay, did we complete our FAI? If it was completed, fantastic, let's move on. If not, let's wait. But at least we were able to get some other stuff done in the meantime before we got to that point. So it doesn't stop things, okay? There might be a delay in one of these other processes, but the main process can keep right on going. And strangely enough, the reason why I put the model here, and of course this is actually CV10. CV10 is the USS Yorktown. USS Yorktown actually was the one that launched the first plane attack on the Yamato to sink the battleship. That battleship had 18.1-inch guns, the biggest guns ever to exist on a battleship. You say impressive, but an aircraft carrier took it down. Planes took it down. So that's why. Not necessarily saying, just very ironic. You know, history is very ironic, kind of, isn't it? Okay. Anyway, so that's that. All right. That's why with the aircraft carrier approach, you have your main process would be something like the ECO, and then as I was sub-processes added when needed. That's the key, is where you can say, look, I want to have a process like mechanical. Mechanical do their design. It's not going to stop the actual ECO because we can do this other stuff in the meantime and allow us to continue. Also, you could add multiple processes at the same time. So let's something like this. You have the ECO process there, and then I have something like engineering processes. And I'm not even saying what those engineering processes are, because we have to determine what they are. We can make our determination now as we're building the system to say what those are. But I could have the prototype process kick off at any time. I mean, there's no real stopping it beginning earlier than later. There's nothing stopping it. That's the key of having these sub-processes. And then, of course, something like an FAI process is going to kick off at any time. That's true as well. That's the whole point. And the nice thing is that after all of that, then it can be done, and just at the end of the process, say, okay, did we fulfill all the requirements for that ECO? Any comments or questions on that?
I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned that for project management. So,
Turn on.
Hello. All right. So I was wondering when you mentioned about the project management. Like, I've never heard of the aircraft approach. I'm PMI certified. I just was wondering, how do you really incorporate that? What's is there another verbiage or something that you use to kind of think that in? Because my PM ears are up in this process, so I'm just trying to figure out how to correlate that back to what we're doing here.
Right. So that's what I said. If you think about it like critical path, as a project manager, critical path is the maximum length or the minimum length you can for a project. So if we can shorten that, when you talk about crashing a project, what does that mean?
Crashing a project?
Crashing a project.
I have no idea.
Okay, so crashing means you say, okay, we have to somehow shorten the project timeline because either A, we're under the gun, obviously, so we can throw more resources at it, or we say, is there some way we can bring or put tasks in a tandem situation? Try to.
So to me, that sounds like we're rebaselining.
So that's the end result. Okay. But the procedure to get to that requires you to do there's some tool that you have to follow, right?
Sure.
And that's what when you crash a project, you say, okay, well, how can we shorten this timeline? And this is kind of the way it is, but it's not in that same the same methodology, because this is really more process driven than it is timeline driven. Okay.
All right.
But there's correlation. That's what I'm trying to say. There's some correlation. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Any more comments or questions before we dive into this? I'm doing my time.
And this is all quite new to me still, so maybe it's neither here nor there, but I'm just trying to imagine how, so for example, in this particular process when we're about to announce a new product, for example, and day of announcement, the name changes. And that happens. So I guess I'm just trying to imagine at what point, because that could definitely halt this whole process when it comes to that piece of it. No? Okay.
So we actually...
It does currently.
Things in the back end, but if someone what's going on, if you do a name change in this thing. It doesn't necessarily stop the actions that are happening. I mean, a name change may be affected on the marketing materials, all that other stuff like that, but when it comes to what we've designed and all that, that oftentimes gets updated in the background after the fact. Life cycle changes, all that stuff happens in the background. But
Think of like a temporary driver's license when you renew. It doesn't stop you from driving. It's just until your actual,
Yeah,
renewal
but
comes.
we have a deadline to get it sellable. So I'm more thinking the process I've announced to sell to orderable. So to get it to where not sell, but where customers can start ordering. And maybe I just need to kind of process it a little more and if I still have questions.
And that actually the name change actually came up during our design sessions. We talked about how we would address that, didn't we? I seem to remember that conversation.
I wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. But we did consider it, and we said, okay, how do we want to incorporate that understanding that we would have these kinds of changes, and what can we do about it? So we're trying to address them at least the best we can in these design sessions with the intent that we would actually build some functionality into the system to allow that to happen. So it's not like, whoa, wait a second, we're caught blindsided because we never knew this was coming. We did. We just need to be able to rebuild the road around the obstacles and just follow the road. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay? Any more questions? All right, sounds good. So let me go ahead and okay. Yes.
What's the name of that battleship?
That was the Yamato. That was a Japanese. They built two battleships, the Yamato and the Masashi, and they were actually laid the hole for a third one. But they converted that into an aircraft carrier, and 2 days after it left port, it was sunk by a U.S. submarine in the Second World War. Yep, absolutely. Yep. So, all right. So let me go ahead and grab my glasses, and go ahead. Let's look at some stuff. Okay. So what I did was I put up this. Let's see just a quick diagram here. And let me grab my little pointer. So what I have here, an item here is what we consider a major building block inside PLM, but most basic building block. The item contains your data, your metadata for your item, for your part, your component, assembly, sub-assembly, whatever. That's what you're looking at. Now, underneath that, then you have this what's called a PLM document. And a PLM document it's actually an object in the system. It's not the file itself, but it can house the other files underneath it. So I'm trying to make this whole thing look like what would be considered a CAD component, okay? So you have your metadata over here with your item, you have your document that's created. Under that, you have your native part file, like for example, the SLD PRT. And right next to it, you have maybe a PDF rendering of that part as well, and that's sitting there. Or you could have a possible maybe a drawing that's also set up as a PDF, something like that. That's kind of the way it is. And then off of that, then we can have something like this, a reference, and that reference is a connection to something else. You see, I have a vendor docs, something like that. So basically, it could be like a vendor spec or something like that. That's something that would be considered a reference document. And that could be managed either as rev controlled or not, but it's not going to rev every time you update your product. It's just keeps track of it, just keeps a link to it, that's all. Okay?
Can we keep links? Just a question. Can we keep links to data sheets inside there? We don't do it right now. We just say what the part number is and that kind of thing.
So when you say data sheets, are you talking about
what if like any popcorn parts we put on boards, that kind of thing? We don't have any. We have the part number and the vendor, or the manufacturer, but no data sheets. we oftentimes go to this tool, then we take that data and go to another tool, look at that up, find it,
Yeah.
So there's not really a link to it.
Okay, so in that case, my gut feeling would say yes. You could attach it as some, again, as long as it can sit with this structure, with an item or a document, as long as it has that inside the system, you can attach any file you want. And then you can link it back to some product, whatever product that is, you can link it to it in some shape, form, or fashion. Just there are ways to get around this. I say, and the reason why I'm highlighting this reference, because that reference means that, again, it's a looser connection than if it were linked. If it's linked, it's part of the product definition. Okay, so the product definitely has to keep track of that. And when you check out the item, you check out the document. When you check out the document, you uprev your files as well. So it creates a copy of this entire thing here. Because this related here, because you have it related, then the testing results would also be copied. With the intent that you would have to do what? Do testing on this new part, right? That's the intent, at least. Okay? All right. Okay. So, let's go ahead and look at Rioli. Okay. So, as you can see, we don't have a lot for PLM necessarily, but the processes are pretty long. That's kind of the problem. Okay, so we don't have like you can see I don't have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, it's just a few, First of all, we're gonna go ahead and we'll do this. We'll create a part in the system, and we'll attach that part to a business process. I kind of have this thrown in here, and this is gonna really the managed business PLM business processes is really more of a. It's not a procedure. It's more of a system verification that the system can do certain things. That's really what it's about. Okay. So then, but we'll go ahead and create, and of course I have to skip my first one because I can't create anything in CAD. We don't have that capability right now. So, but I'll be creating items inside PLM, and we'll just do it right from there. And we'll just create a bill of material. We'll start with a component. We'll build a bill of material, and we'll just put that on a business process, send it through the process, and we'll send it through the MPI, and we'll send it. We'll do the new part creation request. Now, here's a question I have, and I'm kind of throwing out to the larger group at the same time, depending on how we answer it. Okay. So some companies will say we don't want the engineer to create new components in the system because usually they mess something up. Either they create a duplicate item or there's some missing information or something like that. And so they create a business process to control that item creation process itself. And then we'll have something, what I consider a configuration manager, which I think you guys talk about this, it's called base data, or a facilitator, is somebody who will go in and they review the data, say, is it complete? And if so, great, I'll create the item for you. And send a notification back to the engineer, here's your new part. If there's a problem or the data isn't complete, they reject it back to the engineer, say, hey, can you provide some more information? You're missing data. So that's kind of, or they'll say, no, this already exists in the system. And in fact, here it is, and link it back to the business, the request, new part request, and then now they have a part. So again, the intent is to reduce the overhead and the duplication of effort on creating or parts and stuff like that. So that's really the intent of that. So again, Biamp has to come up with maybe a thought on that to see if that's something that's going to be considered. Or you say, no, engineers are pretty good, they'll do their thing. Now, with that said, we have explored the capability that what the system does, and that is using categories, it can create a generic, or not generic, that's the wrong way to say it. It can create the description for that part based on parameters selected on that particular category. So the category would be like a resistor, 0.065 watts, 10K, and then it builds out the description as it creates. And I'll play with that a little bit. I got a little something in there we can do something with. So that's another thing. So maybe it's not as big of a deal. Maybe it's something to say, nah, engineers are good. They can find stuff in the system because it's very consistent. That's what it is. It's very consistent. Okay. So then we'll go into the MPI process, and in the MPI process, we'll actually walk through some of the steps as you take it from the beginning through to release, and actually we already have, because we took the Kaizen approach to this to begin with, then it actually goes into operations, and operations actually continues the process beyond the engineering release. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll go into the battleship ECO now, which is kind of we took all the guns off it. It's not really a battleship anymore. It's kind of like a floating whatever. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, all right. So let's have some fun. Okay. So here we are, right here in PLM. Obviously, I have my product lifecycle management menu here. So there are several menus that I'm not going to get too deep into right now, but probably the biggest one that would be considered part of the engineering side of things would be this PLM data management, where you can work with your master data, documents, folders, items. So that's really the main stuff. We don't deal too much with folders. I should just a quick comment on that, because that's more of an old. It's like an 80s style engineer that says I have to have a folder that contains all of my stuff because it's all folder driven, because it's all Windows based. That doesn't exist anymore. You create your bill of material inside the system. It doesn't matter if it's located in a folder or not. You're going to be able to find it in the system because you do your search, right? So really, the folder becomes a lack. Yes, Dave.
All right, just a quick question from our process. Just a quick question. From our process, would the owner of that information be base data or engineering?
I would say, when we say that information, which information?
Well, you've kind of got a master data area there. Is that just a shared collection? Is there a process as far as ownership of
the
form and structure of that data at all?
Yeah, so when you have master data, you can see it has alternate items, defaults, classification management, and so this is really an admin that's going to be managing whatever that is, whoever that would be, maybe Felicia or somebody else. Okay. They would be handling the setup of the system in the back. Of course, we're going to be doing this during the project, but somebody's going to be managing this thing from go live on. Somebody's have to manage, and that's what the master data would be. So it's not really. I don't think it's really either or.
It's not bad.
It's IT.
Felicia's world.
Yeah, it's more IT related.
Thank you, Felicia.
I keep throwing her on the bus. Yeah. Okay.
Either that or it's something that we have to define as part of our master data management strategy.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
I can understand a lot of those items being like a. I can understand a lot of those items being like a Felicia type of thing, but is the alternative items like replacement parts in a design? That would.
Yes.
And okay, so that seems thoroughly in engineering.
Yes, but that still is going to be managed. That for me, global alternative items are rarely used. I'd much rather use a local alternative item, and that's handled on the bottom level. And we've gone through that when we did the RCI process.
Okay.
That revision control item process at the very beginning, which is all that non-scout stuff, that would actually have it in there. So but we can definitely look into that. But it's part of the Rioli test script already. Okay. Okay. All right. So if I come in here and I select PLM items, which is basically be going into item management to PLM items. Then in here, I can go ahead and select new. And just for today's purposes, I actually came in and went and looked up an integrated circuit. So an IC from Texas Instruments, I said, hey, that doesn't exist in the system. I need to put it in the system. Okay, so we're going to go in and pretend like this is a new item that I want to create in the system. So the first thing I want to do is go back to here. And what I have done for the initial testing purposes and being able to use what's called a mask, and a mask in PLM terms just says what's the next number in a series or my sequence to get for whatever thing that I'm creating. So what I've done is I went into in my selection, you can see I have my product code and I have some number in here. That's just the default that I threw in there. You can still see it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and I'm just going to put in 555. And the only reason why is because that's obviously we're now moving to a new numbering schema, and that schema is still it has to be defined. I understand like a resistor is 100, and I think an IC is 104 or something. I don't know. I'm not too concerned about that right now. I just want to be able to say that based on my number that I put here, the system recognizes that number as in that field, and then says go ahead and create. Let's go back to general, back up here, and I'm just going to come in here and call this an IC, and there's a bunch of stuff I could put in here, but this IC, blah blah blah. Just go in and you see. I actually go back to the specification. 1.3 volt, so 1.3 volt, and it doesn't matter right now. I just need something in there. So at least it makes sense, right? There's at least something you see. It's not just demo 1, demo 2. Okay, so I go here, and when I click save, it grabs that 555 and gets the next number in the sequence. So that's really the intent. Now, how we actually get that prefix number is still to be determined, because we may use an actual field that is separate, that has all of the controlled items and information, that those specific numbers, and then you select that number and it populates. But for now, I just have that text because it's easy for me to just fill out whatever I want, and it's in there. So that's the way it works. So now that I've created this item in the system, then what I'm going to do is say, okay, now I've done this, I want to attach this design specification to that item, okay? So what I will do is I go in here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new document. And I'm just going to grab something here, and I'm going to call this the same thing, IC 1.3 volt, just to give it some consistency, and just go ahead and click save. And then under files, I'm going to add my file, and I should have it on my desktop. All right, look at this picture of me. Look at that. All right, awesome. So there's the Texas Instruments AIC 111, and there we go. Open that. Okay. And save. So the file, this is the unique identifier. This F- number is basically what the system uses as as your record ID. Here's what we call the version. That 0001 is your version. Items have revisions, documents have revisions, files have versions. I have no idea why they wanted to switch it up, but that's the way it is, okay? So you have your sorry?
Just a quick question. Is that being saved inside of IDM or document management?
Right now, yes.
It is, okay,
Yeah.
because they're tied together.
Exactly. Yep. There's a link there. Yep, absolutely. Yep. So that's the cool thing, is because now as I'm saving these files, it actually did the upload to LN while I did that to grab that file. So that file now is part of LN. That's a nice thing. Okay? Yep. Thanks, Dave, for shit. Okay, so now that I have the file there, so basically if I go back to my Visio, I will show you that what I did is I created the item first, then I went ahead and created the document, and then I added some file here. So we'll call it a native PDF. So I added the PDF because I guess this was not an actual CAD file. So I just added a PDF to it. So in a sense, I'm following this structure for the most part by what I just did with that just simple, very simple component. Okay?
Good question, Brian.
Yes.
So was that file that you added a reference file or a related file?
Okay. So Mike asked, was that a reference file or was it a related file? And the answer is, it is actually a part of this document here. It was actually a related file, because when I create an item, I cannot reference a document directly to an item. I have to reference a document to another document. That's the link I can create, the establishment I can create between the two. So I can't just grab, I'd say, oh, this is something on the item. No, an item does not have a direct relationship to a file. It has to have a relationship to a document. The document has a relationship to the file or files. So
It's
Paul.
the same question, Brian, with CAD drawings.
Yes.
Would that be the same relation?
That's more of a CAD style right there, which you see on the screen, because we're assuming that your DWG is here, and then your PDF of that DWG is right there.
It's still a duplicate.
Exactly, and it's controlled because when you check out your item here, when you check this out, the document is checked out, the files are checked out, and everything's up-revved, everything. So anything that's referenced though will just be, oh, we know you're there. We're not going to up-rev you. But if, for example, there was a related connection to another document with another something on there, that would be up-revved. Okay. Okay. So back to LN. There we go. Okay. So now that I've created this component, then I would say, okay, based on my understanding of what I want to do, let's go back to Rioli and let's open up, let's create revision controlled item. And let's actually look at it. I should have done this a little bit earlier. Sorry, I apologize. I'll do it now. Okay, so first thing, create new engineering item. We just did that. Does it have a revision? Absolutely. Okay. Create update EBOM. Okay, well, we have to work on that. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's create an EBOM. Okay, let's put this in. So back to LN, and let's go and we will just go ahead and take duplicate, and I'm just going to call this we'll call this 1.4 volt. So it's a little bit more, just one more. Okay, we'll do that, and as you can see, it says copy. So when I say duplicate, this is on the document, okay? So you can see it says duplicate your file. So basically, create a copy of the file and move that as well, along with this duplication of the document, okay? So let me go ahead and say copy. And do you want to do another one? No. And then what I'm going to do now is I go back to my item, and this is not exactly the way I would probably do it, because I'd probably do it from the item level, because it'll ask me, do you want to duplicate your document? Do you want to duplicate your file? So it'll do the whole tree down, and won't necessarily me. But hey, I was happy to be on the document. I didn't realize it. So
it's creating unique IDs.
Yes, exactly.
So they're not referenced; they're unique.
These are unique items, exactly, unique documents, absolutely. So, and that's why, because we're going to use them on different things, right?
Yep.
So let's go to my item. I'll go ahead and click duplicate, and as you can see, it doesn't say duplicate because it knows that I created something else. So anyway, sorry. So go ahead and change this description here as well to 4. Copy close. So no. And so if I look here, I should see that on my document, I can now go ahead and say, oh, that's right. I forgot to link the two. That's right. Okay, so click new. I created the document and forgot to link them. So let's go grab my IC 1.4 volts, save that. So now I have generated that link between the two. And let me go back to my, let's see. So this was 2. So let me go back to my 555. That's why I want to use 555 for easy to search for. Yeah. This is my 1.3 volts. So let me go add my 1.3 volt IC to this for the document here as well. And now at least I have my connection there too. So now I have two integrated circuits here. Let's go and say, pretend like we want to create a subassembly of integrated circuits. We would never probably want to do that in real life, but for the sake of this, we'll go ahead and do it. So let me go ahead and create a new item, and I'm going to call this the IC subassembly. So go ahead and do that. Let's click save. And if I go to my BOM, I'll go ahead and select 555. And we'll get 1. Unfortunately, I have to do this twice. I can't just select multiples, so actually I could do this. Let me do this. Let's go back to your backspace. I know it's 2. So let's go ahead and save that. And as you notice, the status pops up as draft because those were both recently created. So the system knows that these are editable. As you can see, also the ref here is draft. So these are all now still editable within the system. Okay, so what would I typically do at this point? Well, okay, let's go back to, follow my instructions here. Okay, so create, update, EBOM. Okay, we feel pretty comfortable we did the create and the update. So define local alternative items. Okay, let's do that. So let's go back to LN. And on here, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this one right here. And let's say in this case, I could possibly use, and where is it? That's my actions, the reference. Local alternative items. There it is. So now I can go out and search for a new one. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick just something else. I'm going to just grab, let's just go, you know what, we'll say we can use resistors. Nobody would ever do that, right? So let's just go say it's a resistor. So by selecting a resistor now, I could say these are interchangeable parts for this particular bill of material. That's what it is. So save, and now that's stored in here. So if I close that, there's no real indicator. As you can see, there's nothing that really pops out that tells you have other alternative items. This is something you kind of have to look for. There might be another way to do this, maybe systematically, to give you that. Yes, Corey?
This may have been covered before, maybe in the sessions, but for instead of an alternative item, will a user be able to, or engineer be able to see different manufacturers associated to that single item?
Okay.
Or
All right.
maybe you haven't got there yet.
I wasn't planning on talking about it, but now that you mention it, let's talk about it. Okay. So if you're looking at a particular item, and you say, what is that? What are my? And let's go take a look at. Sorry, not that one. I want to go to here. And you can see I have suppliers, manufacturers. Let's go with the suppliers. So I can now add as many suppliers as I wish to this particular item, to your point. And actually, that's very important to you.
Please tell me that's an LN and not an appeal. That's a call by purchasing based on specification.
So what happens is that you can either manage your suppliers in PLM or in LN. This is one of the things you can actually pull your data back from LN and actually populate inside PLM. As a view, right. So your manufacturer is typically allowed to be managed by PLM. Your suppliers are typically managed by ERP. And then you decide, again, it's back to who is the single source of truth. You know, who manages the list. You don't want to have both working at the same time because then you're gonna get out of sync.
But manufacturers are listed in LN.
And they can be managed as well from LN as well. They can be managed there.
Okay.
So
not suppliers, manufacturers. I just want to make the distinction.
Yeah.
Really for customers. Now we're calling a manufacturer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're
absolutely.
As a clarification, oftentimes, like a mechanical engineer will specify something. Maybe it's off the shelf, right? They don't really care if you buy it, and it might be a commodity item. But oftentimes, what I would tell the mechanical engineer, give a sample of what something that you can specify. If you can't just call it out as an M4 screw, for example, you have to call it out M4 screw, and then this is the manufacturer you get it from if you want. Is that the same? I mean, can we then manage it back the same way? So that they go, okay, well, I'm not really buying it from them, I'm buying it from somebody else.
Right, but with the same specs.
Same specs.
Same specs. And I think that's, so the engineer, yeah, definitely would want to manage if there's certain requirements for that particular part. But as long as you meet those requirements from a sourcing perspective, engineer doesn't care. Right?
It's just like managing the L, right? But you manage it from L. Right?
Yeah.
So forget all.
So everything the college just said didn't go through. Sorry.
And so like in that case, that unforced screw, engineering is gonna specify that based on, let's say, the McMaster-Carr database, right? That's the manufacturer that you intended to have the design use, right?
Right.
Supply chain is gonna manage who we buy that from. Maybe it's, they're One Monroe now, or Jim's Screw Shop, or whatever. And from the sound of it, correct me if I'm wrong here, Brian, that supplier list then can feed back into PLM. Is that something we can choose to have done or not?
Yes, it can be done. It really, I mean, it's a little bit about, there's not like hard and fast rules about what you have to do. It really comes down to how much information do we want engineering to know about, and are we willing to spend the time and effort to maintain that list and have that list be populated back to PLM. So if that's what you want to maintain it. It's like, yes, they absolutely need to know, because I mean, at the same time, as how do you determine what your approved vendors are, and who determines what makes that approval? Again, there's a lot of things that need to be managed from that perspective. So you have to know who's doing what, and that's why you have to draw lines in the sand and say this is going to be handling this piece, and this piece.
Yeah, I'll double down with what Mike is noting though, but because you manage your approved vendors by saying who do I want as strategic partners, and can they deliver parts that meet spec, right?
Right.
Now that spec is either an off-the-shelf type of spec that you could note, or the manufacturer that they're specifying, but they're a distributor of that part, or if it's custom parts, then they have to be able to meet, we have to approve the first article of those custom parts.
Right.
So I just really want to strongly agree with that, where it's suppliers in ERP, we can point it back to PLM, right? Manufacturers, if there's a manufacturer off the shelf, then that's defined by engineering, push to ERP.
Exactly, because I mean, Corey, I'm sure you'll be able to find somebody and say, well, we get a better price break from so and so than from so and so. It's the same part, but they give a better price, and so that's obviously what you would want to go with, because you met the specification.
Yeah, one thing I want to be careful about, a lot of ERPs, manufacturer ID and supplier ID are different than how you're probably using it here, because I've seen this time and time again. Manufacturer ID is usually a one-to-one relationship to the part number. Meaning if you have 12 suppliers, how can they all have the same part number? So then they get stuck. Do I have to come up with a new part number because I want an alternative? No, don't do that. When is that used? Typically in aerospace and defense industry, there's almost like a universal part. So if you give it to anybody, they're all using the same part number, and that's usually what that field's used for. Not to be the same that this chemic part number for this capacitor is different than Matsushita has a completely different, that's called the supplier ID. Let's leave it that you're getting it from a distributor for now. Pretend you're direct sourcing. You're saying these are my preferred suppliers that can provide this part number from Biamp. And that's a supplier ID. It's a one-to-many relationship, which is what you want to keep it. You want to keep it owned by purchasing. Like I said, engineers determine specification. They don't determine the supplier of that specification.
I think the only place that this breaks down for us is that having, and we still need to talk about this about, is about for compliance data, because we need to make sure that it is compliant, whoever you're getting it from, So right now it resides all in PLM, so it's kind of a hard place to. But I think that we need to start addressing where the compliance data really needs to be. Yep.
And even recently, even since last week, we found through some investigation that there is a component engineering feature within PLM that allows you to link to Silicon Expert, which of course is a massive online database It's basically the Library of Congress for parts, and has millions of parts in there. And if we link to that, then we have a relationship to a standard, an industry recognized standard part. And that obviously would provide a significant amount of cleaning up, the ambiguity about which part we're actually trying to get, to reduce sourcing issues and things like that, because now you don't, not like trying to guess. There's no guesswork involved as much. I mean, it's not 100% gone, but at least it improves a lot of what that relationship is and what we're actually trying to use. We have a hand in the back.
A quick question. You're all saying, well, Paul just said,
Mike?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Pick up, Carl.
All right, can you hear me? Yep. Yeah. Well, I can remember my question now. You dropped a lot of really interesting information, like you're going to connect to something that keeps us track of all the current part numbers in the system in relation to the world. Does it have end of life information with it? Because that's going to help you in order to sunset your product, or, which gets into the second part of this question, in your alternate parts, does that also feed into the use up functionality if you do get end of life and you've got component parts on there? You can answer that. I'm going to get my questions out of the way and then close my mouth. If that's okay with you.
All right.
Okay, cool. So those are those two questions. Now, in relation to the manufacturer part number, and I'm sorry to counter you on this, Paul. Passive components, I would say purchasing has full control. Active components, you're talking, your ICs and whatnot. Engineering doesn't just set the spec. They know we've tested this manufacturer and trusted. From the business standpoint, if purchasing goes out and buys something because it's cheap, it comes in and it's a NCNR and it's not good, is that engineering or is it purchasing? Can you control that in the system as well and keep it end to end informing everybody? Because this might work minimally in electronics. It gets complex, it gets really complex, as you all know. Does PLM help manage that and streamline that process as well? Thanks, Brian.
Okay, so back to the first question, right? What was the first question? Well, he has three questions. You're asking me.
Recording. Someone check the recording, please.
So you forgot already too, huh?
End of life managed in PLM.
Okay, so as far as saying, okay, we reached the end of life with respect to product or components or anything like that, just like you have for development, you need to have a retiring process as well. Something that will take you through that process so you know what to do for your disposition, for what is there a replacement we're looking for, or is it just simply we're just going to kill it? What do we do with it with excess stock? What are we going to do with this? So there's a lot of questions going to pop up, and how you determine that? Well, again, do you have an answer? Is it going to be the same answer to every single? No, absolutely not. So you just need a process in place to say, okay, put your eyes on it. Tell us what needs to be done. Once it's done, we say, great, let's do it. Make it so. Okay? So that's really what it was. Second question was about manufacturing parts, right?
No, about enforcing the manufacturing requirements about the system.
Right.
When it is manufacturer specific, is that to spec and there is no alternate? Well, actually, no, I'm glad you brought that back. Am I speaking loud enough to get the mic up there?
No, you're not.
Sure.
Don't worry.
So it's 3 seconds.
Okay. The second part of that question that I left unasked, and my apologies for this. Can you put that in the system where you're going to use the same part number for some reason inside of that when the manufacturer is going to sunset it and replace it with a direct replacement part? Fits the socket you're going to plug it into, you just drop it in. But when it's coming up, can you put that in the system and say on this date end of life is, and it's going to switch to this part without having to change it as an alternate inside the system, but the manufacturer's part number as its own alternate.
Right. So typically we would use an alternate part. What we would use would be a part replacement. Because you say, okay, this part is being used up and through this date, and then from this date we're going to start using this new part. And that's typically just that's just a change in product, product structure, right? There's typically not a whole lot needs to be done. So you're not really using altered parts at that point. It's really just a replacement, okay? And I think, if I remember correctly, actually the question you were asking as well is, if engineering specifically says this is the manufacturer, and they say, and they're adamant about it, and somebody decides, I'm not saying this is going to be Corey, but if somebody says, well, this part is so much cheaper, it's made in China, you put it in the board, you put it out in product or out in the field, and lo and behold, there are intermittent issues going on. Oh, what happened? Oh, we don't know. It's shoddy parts. Now we have a shoddy product, and you may not find that as being the actual culprit until maybe many years later down the road. Who knows? But if engineering has done their testing correctly, and they're able to prove that the system is stable, use what engineering has said. And I'm being a little bit biased to an extent, but isn't that the whole purpose of doing testing and prototyping, is to be able to prove by proof of concept that things are going to work.
Yeah.
So the minute you start cutting corners, you know what's going to happen.
Form fit function literally means that blindfolded, going to a pickle barrel, 2 different vendors, you pull them out at random, and they're good for use in all the boards. They may be used in 12 products, they have to be used in all 12 and work. It's the same part number. It's not like a rev. It's not like a different alternative. Alternative could be a better than part. Like you go a 2% capacitor,
Or slightly more expensive.
10% because there's a wide amount of it. Oh, I have the higher quality part.
Yep.
Sorry. Then you could definitely use the alternative, and that would actually be a different form fit function, which only needs the higher value part, but it fits perfectly on the circuit board. That's an alternative part. That's not the same thing as a drop-in equivalent vendor.
Exactly, or drop-in quality. Exactly. We definitely don't want to go back to
quality needs, but that purchasing owns that issue that they're getting from quality vendors.
And that's why the conversation between purchasing and engineering has to be maintained as well, so that there's a clean understanding of what's actually going on. And engineering is because they're not going to say, oh, look, because we got a bunch of cheap parts, we're going to use those. No, they're going to say, this is what works with this board, this is what works with this product. And then it's up to purchasing to say, okay, how can I source that, right? And if there's an issue, they're not going to say, well, we'll just find something else. They're going to go back to engineering and say, sorry, can you look for some possible alternative to that? And engineers will go ahead and make that design change based on their recommendations, not based on the cost or something like that. Although that would be an influence factor, right? Of course, yes. All right. What are you looking on time here? 10 o'clock, okay. My plan was to go all the way to 10:30, so everybody still good? All right, good. Okay, so moving along here. So now that we have our so-called query bill of material here, this kind of quirky thing going on. So I have the ability now, let's go back to Rioli and just confirm. So link to business process. So define a local alternative items. We've done that. Link to business process. Copy item. We did the copy already because we had to copy for the other IC. Final engineering data and copy e-item to production item. So we'll have some fun with that. Okay. So let's go ahead and link to business process. So there's 2 ways to do that. One way is to create your business process. So for example, if I came in here and just for my purposes, if you will, I'm going to go into a business process overview, and I can create a business process in here. And if I went to select, like for example, an ECR, just for what we want to do here is it's only a couple steps in there, so it's not a big deal. Actually, you know what? Let's not do an ECR. Let's go to, and you guys don't use ECNs, but I actually have a test process in here. So I'm going to use the test process. And when I select that template, then the system will go in, find that template, apply it to the business process, and then I can go in and look at it from my references in my view. Where is it? Action. I think I need to save it first. Sorry. Forgot about that. Okay. There we go. That's what I want. Okay, so I go to my business process workflow, and it shows me the tasks that I will apply to this business process. Grab my little pointer thing. Okay, so somewhat blurry, but this is the originator. This is called a reject step. This is a check-in. This is sent to ERP, and that is a notification step. So I just grabbed a smattering of tests, of tasks to be able to get each type, so to speak. Okay. First one's a user test. That's a user step. That's a group step. So that's why I wanted to capture that in a sense. So from here, then I'd say if this were, like I say, a new part request, then I would send it through an approval process. This would be the approval process. Okay. And what I would want to do then is say, okay, now that I have my IC subassembly, my BOM, then I can attach it to this. So what I go in and do is I come back to my business process itself, and I go to my items, click new, open, select my IC. So I think I had IC sub, that's the one, and save that. And now it's attached as linked to that business process. That's one way of doing it. This is the tip. This is mostly the more detailed way of doing it. There is another way. If I didn't want to go down that road, I would actually go back to my subassembly and I say, I want to launch this. So I go in and do what's called a dispatch. And that dispatch then immediately can link it to a business process and launch that process in pretty much one step. This is a fast way of doing things, okay? Typically that doesn't happen too much because most of our business processes are very long and complex. And usually they're used for, usually you come in midstream or something like that, or maybe it's attached at some point further down the road, not necessarily right at the beginning. So, but again, the flexibility what the system can offer. But since I already linked it to the other one, I'll just go ahead and go back to here, and let me go. I'm going to leave my workflow open for a second. Okay, so now that I've done this, let me go back to my end-to-end testing in Really, and I'm going to actually close this. And I'm going to go to Manage PLM Business Processes. And in here, I'm going to talk about Create New Business Process. So I created a new business process. I then was able to, can I edit it? Oh yeah, let me go back and edit it. Okay, so let me go back here. And based on my default template I created for this business process, then under the detailed description, and let me just collapse some stuff here, give me some space. So you can see, by default, I actually had it fill out with some text. It's fill out the reason for the change request or new product concept. So I actually put that as text inside here, telling you exactly what to put in the field, right? The same thing for the impact analysis. Describe the impact of the business with any textual details. So tell me, why are you doing this? What's the reason? Okay, so I can now come in here, highlight this, and fill this out and say, new request, new part. Oops, forgot to get my caps lock on. So anyway, typing with one hand is not easy. All right, so go ahead with a capital N. Here we go, new part. So of course I can fill out the rest of them as well, but that's really what I want. So edit, there we go. So I have a new information in there. Okay, back to Really. So I go ahead and I want to launch my business process. Okay, so from here I go to actions, and let me just talk. Is that pretty legible? Pretty much. Okay, good. So launch complete. Here we go. So we have the launch complete, cancel, and then some other stuff down here. We won't. It's not that important at this point. So for the launch, that's really the big one. So launching the process says it now becomes active, meaning that you have an active step in the system, meaning it's going to start to do stuff, okay? As long as it sits, as you see where it says created right here, as long as it sits in created mode, nobody knows about it unless they go into the system and actually look it up, because it's not doing anything. It's just sitting there. It's just basically in stasis. It's not going to do much, okay? So, and to kind of help that out a little bit, and this is not just a little bit of a side note, if you go back to your business process overview, as you can see, I have lots of colors in here because, as you can see, if anything that's created has basically a purple color, if it's completed, it's green, if it's rejected, it's gray, Rejected means it has an orangish color. So this helps kind of fails as red. So it kind of gives it a little bit of color. I love colors because colors mean so much when you see something. Red lights, green light. So anyway, so coming back here then, I want to go ahead and select Actions, Launch. And we will see that the created will now change to in progress. In progress means is now happy path. All right. We started, we have a date created, we have a date time. The originator is assigned immediately. So this originator, again, this is what I was talking about. The originator is the person that launches the process. That's the person that cannot be changed. However, if we see, and I can't see it there, so it probably is down a little bit. So if we look at, back to the general tab, responsible user, you can see I can actually change that. I can select a responsible user. You can see there's so many people in the system. So not a whole lot of them be selecting from. Mark, I'll make Mark do this, right? He's on vacation. He should be doing this, right? Anyway, sorry about that. So let's go back to here. And what do we see? So we go back to the business process workflow. And this is one of the neat little features of what PLM does. So if you do a refresh, you notice now you have this blue dot sitting on the first task. That's the active task that you have in the system. That's telling you at what stage in the process this thing is sitting. Very important when you're saying, okay, what's going on? What's the holdup? Or something like that, okay? So we can see as this progresses through where it's located, okay? So what do I get from this? I would have gotten an email had the email notification worked. But I didn't because it's not quite working. Still working on it. I've got Infor support doing a lot of running. They're running around chasing stuff. Okay, so if I go back to the business process, I want to go back to the, don't want to go back to anything. I want to go to my tasks. And we will see that if I have this new task for EO25, and I'm just going to put in 00025 just so I can filter on it, so I don't have to look at all my other stuff. Okay, so that task is where I'm going to find information. So, for example, if I had information, you put the description or something like that, and it would say, you need to go take a look at this. Now, typically what I like to do is the first task goes back to the originator, meaning the person who launched the process. The reason why I like to do that is because it gives you a sanity check that the person can look at and say, okay, is everything set up correctly? Did I include my information as I should have? And I have some notes that tell me what exactly I have to do. I don't have it here on this one, but it would tell me you need to do this, and then one, bullet point stuff, all that kind of thing. So it tells me exactly what I need to do. So if I check that to make sure that's right, I forgot to add such and such. Okay, now that's in there, perfect. Now it's good. So once I do that, I say, what can I do? So I open my task. And in here, as you can see, it has the basic information here for the business process task. Now, see where it says task items and task documents? These are really the two big ones. So task items and task documents are the two links that are typically managed in PLM. This is key because when you have items and documents linked to the business process, it requires users that are in PLM to approve your items or documents. You have to approve them. Okay? What does that mean? That means you have to put your eyes on them. That's what it's really trying to say. So there's a step that's there that's not just saying, oh, yeah, and click it and it's on its way. And then later on it's like, did you see that one thing? And it's like, oh, I didn't see it. You had to. You had to prove your items. You had to do it. Okay? So that's kind of the reason why there's a one step. So I put a button out there because it makes it easier for myself. As you can see, I have this approve all items. So click the approve all items. And as you can see under the response, it now says approved. So that's where it's telling me, as well as the system, that I saw that. Now, whether I opened it up and actually did something, it's completely up to me, But I have already, and basically I'm signing my name on the dotted line is what I'm doing, right? So when I go to actions now, let's take a look at these. So we talked about this in the presentation, but now you can see I have the approved task with attachments, and that's a one-step button. We don't want to talk about that too much, but I'll describe it a little bit later. So we have the reject, we have the return, delegate, reassign, forward, skip, undo, skip, reject, and forward. So all of those actions we now have at our disposal for this particular task. So for these all intents and purposes, we found out that the approved task for me does not work. For some reason, for support it does. For me, it doesn't work, but I can click the approved task with attachments, so I'll do that. And if you notice, the step now went to 010 reject. And the user group now says the task is a group task and is assigned to mechanical engineering. Okay? So we went from that user step that I didn't have to do anything but just open it up, look at it, approve, done. Now I have to do a few more extra steps. Okay? So now, if we go back to our, so let's close my business process here. Oh, that was what I wanted. Sorry. Okay, so back to my overview. No, not the overview. I want to look at back down to 25, and let's open that back up again. And let's go to references, business process workflow, and now we should see the blue dot is moved on to the group task. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So this will continue to march through from here to here to here, and then go right through this process. These are system steps. It's not going to happen too much. You're not going to see too much happening. It's just going to go right through it. But that's where it stops right now. So that's where the current status is of this business process. So now that I go back to my tasks, and I have this step, now let's play with that reject. So let's take our actions, and we're going to reject task. We're going to say, wait a second, there's something mixing. Okay, so it says what? And there we go. So step 10 in BP 25 is a group task that has not been assigned. So you have to take the task first before you go make any actions. That's the reason why these group tasks are sometimes very beneficial. Sometimes they're maybe not so great. But again, we have to determine that as we generate these things, because it really depends. Because what's the downfall of having a user task? One user. Bottlenecks. You have a group task, no bottlenecks. Well, less bottlenecks. Less. Exactly. Yeah, Mike got that one. Okay, less. So here I would go in and then for my actions, I go ahead and take the task. So I take the task, now it says user group assigned. So now it's assigned to me. Okay, so now it's in my court. I have to deal with this. No, everybody else now, if they go look in from that group, will not see their task. Before I took it, they would have seen the task as well. Everybody in the group sees the task. At least that's the way we have the problem, the system set up right now.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point, yeah. Not to the group leader. But that's just the way it is set up right now. But if I went, because otherwise it would say, assign it to somebody. It wouldn't have come up and just said immediately it's yours. Okay? So let's assume that I say, oh, I made a mistake. I really don't want to do this. Then I can go back and do the return task. And now look, it goes back to user group. So it's back to the group again. So I can resend it back to the group to have somebody else take the task. Okay? That's really the intent of that. So I'm going to go back and do the take task. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the reject. So the first thing it does, it by default goes to the originator. But as you can see, I have a lookup. I can go ahead and select anybody that's in the system that I think of. From what I understand, you can pick anybody you want and have it rejected to that particular person. So it doesn't even have to be somebody inside the business process. It could be somebody completely outside. As long as they have a PLM username, they can be assigned that task. So, yeah, go ahead, Peter.
If it's a group task, can a manager override the group task and say, oh, Bob never takes a document, he really needs to approve this one, I'm gonna assign it or assign that task to?
Yeah. And the answer is any admin can go in and make a change.
Okay.
Yeah, they can assign or change things. There's no lock necessarily from that perspective. It's just for the typical day-to-day operations, this is the way it's managed. But absolutely, if somebody went on vacation, they didn't change there's an out-of-office functionality inside PLM. If they didn't change that, and they assigned the person that would receive all of their tasks, then somebody can go and say, oh, that's right, so-and-so's on vacation, Mark's on vacation, so boom, we're gonna give these all to Peter. You love that, right?
Yep. That's fine.
Okay, so now that I can go ahead and of course I'll just keep it myself because that way we can continue doing this, and then I can say, you know, the reason for the change, you messed up, right? No, nobody would ever say that, right? No, never. So then as I click OK, now you see that if I go back to my business process, wherever it is, I'm going to close down some of those other stuff, get it out of the way, so we get my items and documents out of the way, so we're in the process. Okay, so if I go back to my business process and you see it's in progress, if I refresh, and lo and behold, it's now rejected. So that's the way the status now changes, because it's saying that we're not happy path anymore. We're now in the rejected status. Okay. Usually, if there are multiple tasks at the same time and somebody rejects, Corey, you can say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. When the ECO is going through its process, let's say you're listed as an approver, but you don't necessarily want to reject the task. Let's say it's some minor question. You notice some minor thing that you want to get changed. Can you do a comment instead that goes to the group? Or do you have to reject something and say, you know, like, let's say I notice, oh, hey, you're missing this one part on here, or it's missing this one document.
So basically, you don't want to hold up the show.
Yeah.
You just want to get, hey, by the way. So, excellent question, because that's the purpose of the comments, is to say, okay, I add a comment because everybody will see the comments. You log in, you look at your business process, and what you would do is from the comments tab here, I could go in and say, all right, let me go ahead and say something like, you know, hey, by the way, you know, check your suppliers.
Okay, perfect.
Something like that, and then that is now in the system, and it will be seen on. First of all, it's logged on the particular task if you do it at the task level. And then it shows on the business process, or you can do it at the business process, and you see where it says step begin, which basically says it's starting, it's from the beginning, it's there. And the nice thing about that is because you can carry that play-by-play commentary on the business process as it evolves, right? As it becomes more calm, as you're going through the different steps. Because you don't know at the very beginning that everything is going to happen down the road. Right? Things can happen. So, if you're able to at least keep track of things, then you can say, oh, that's right. We have to make sure that we do such and such. And again, because it's documented in the business process, then you have that ability to review it at whim. That's really what it is. Okay? So, thank you. That was a good question, Corey. Thank you. Okay.
Follow-up question, Brian.
Oh, go ahead. Is it as good as Corey's?
Yes.
Okay.
To
All right.
the comments. Does that comment then send an email to whomever's listed, or is there what is that notification method?
So Kyle and I had a really interesting thing, and yeah, go ahead, Kyle. Make your comments. I will say your thunder.
I suggest, because I don't know if they've developed this, but I definitely suggest, like most things like we have in Teams and we have in Jira, is you can say add somebody, and you can say, you know, provide this question, because without having to reassign, send it back, send it here, it's like we want to be able to collaborate in a way. And I don't know if LN or PLM has that, but that is my suggestion, that they put that in place, just so that we can collaborate. Because these days, everybody knows what collaboration is, and we should be able to do that within this tool.
So Kyle and I actually set that as a gap because we noticed that earlier on when you mentioned. I was like, that is really awesome. I love that because that is really neat, because being able to tag people and then say, hey, by the way, you were mentioned in a comment, just like, you know, you're on Facebook or something like that, right? You're told that somebody mentioned you, or you were, and then the follow-up to that was, you said, okay, so if I comment on somebody or I tag somebody in this business process, would they receive notification for any of the emails that go out? Would they then be notified as well? I was like, that is also a good follow-up, and PLM does not have it right now.
But, sorry, by default on the comments, anybody that's associated with this
Can
would
see
get
it.
an email.
Yeah.
You're talking of the ad as if there's somebody outside of that group that you also want to include?
Correct. Well, if you tag somebody, they would then be notified that they were tagged on that specific comment, whether they were in the process or not.
Can I just make one other comment? Just for as well, it'd be great, like in Jira, you can add people, tag people, and then they will get communicated anytime that issue changes, which is great because, you know, in our Kaizen, we actually said, who are the target group that we want to communicate with at this point if it changes into the next phase. So at some point, say for example, it got moved over to manufacturing, there has to be a set group of people say, hey, by the way, it's coming your way. You know, or if we were ready to announce what was going on, there should be a set of people. But every time, like we're doing right now, having to manage the group, who it is, it seems really tough. But along the way, if you were able to say, oh, by the way, this person is now attached or now part of that group, that would be great.
Yeah. You know, same thing for, that could be quick. The same thing for Jira having the watch feature, being able to, like, I'm not associated with the CCO, I'm not an approver whatsoever, but I kind of want to keep tabs on it.
I tag it so I can watch and see what's going on.
Yep.
So I'm a silent observer.
Yeah, exactly. That feature, really great. Piggyback on Jira's all the time, just kind of watching them. So
yeah,
that'd be great.
And you know, yeah, let Dave make his commentaries. He's itching.
So the thing I want to be clear though here is I think that's not functionality inside of the system today, right?
At this point, no.
And so from a process for this whole group, as you think of things like that, we want to be involved with the Infor user group, and there's avenues in order to get things like that added. And so it's the responsibility of everybody in this team to surface those, and as we come together as the application council, I'll call it, moving forward, is that we're making sure that those get into the user group, because they actually do upvote on features, right? So we need to, as a company, we need to build a coalition with others out there and promote these pieces so they get in. It may be on their roadmap, it may be not, right? The first avenue is you're going to go talk to somebody inside the company. You're going to express this idea. Is this on your roadmap, right? And there's conferences twice a year, and there's groups, and there's our representative into there. So no matter, we're talking about this specific example, but I want to broaden it for everybody just to understand the responsibilities moving forward. Is you'll want to document that, add that as part of the roadmap that we'll have for this council. It'll be owned. And then we'll go and promote these things. Let me circle back to the immediate now. I just want to understand what is the current functionality here. Is it, if somebody adds a comment, it goes to anybody that's currently associated with this, correct?
The comment is stored on the business process, but it does not necessarily notify anybody that the comment was added. But it's available. But if people log in and look at the business process, so they receive a task and they can say, let me go check the comments and see if there's something going on, and they can then review it to see what the deal is.
Okay, so at this point, they're not prompted automatically. So as a group, we need to understand that, and we may need to have a temporary process where if you're adding that comment, you may have to manually go into Outlook and say, hey, everybody, I need you guys to take a look at that. Then we get it into the roadmap of things that we want and get Infor to change it. But I want to make sure we were clear there that it sounds like a great idea. It may already be on their roadmap. In the meantime, we need to make sure that we're not having gaps because we're waiting for something that's coming. So,
and Infor does have an enhancement request process, and they do track obviously the requests that are the enhancements that are put in there. But they typically, they typically look to see how many customers are requesting the same thing before they'll really consider it. If it's just a one-off, they're kind of going, it's no big deal. But like a 15 customers, or there may be someone like an aerospace or an A&D or some customer who's a multi-million-dollar customer, and then they're putting this request, then obviously it creates a lot more weight. So again, it's something we're considering.
Dave, will you publish how we do this, because I mean, we have several ideas that need to get in there, like statistics and stuff like that for these processes to make sure that I know that they don't have. And I'd love to see them, because we need to see KPIs out of this whole thing, and I'm not sure that they have a wide range of that. So please surface how we do this stuff.
Yeah, so we'll be putting that process together and documenting right now. Each of the different functional leads on our team is responsible for collecting those, and then we'll group them all together as we get a little bit farther down the process. So again, from the what's missing or what processes are changing out of all of these, right now, all functional Biamp leads should be documenting those, and then we'll bring those into formal process and formal documents moving forward. So.
And I did include that as a gap on Embryoli as well, so it does exist there. So we're tracking it there.
Okay, does somebody else need mine?
I think it's already answered, but really it was, how do you know there's comment?
Well, again, there's no active description, there's no active notification without telling you that somebody added a comment.
So you just have to be diligent and go look at the comments.
Training issue.
Yeah.
At this point, go ahead, Gordon.
Okay, and to go on with that, just because I want to make sure I understand, if someone rejects a task with that comment, does that comment notify the group on that ECO, or is it just any comment made in whatever form related to that ECO will not, like no one will get notified of it, you just have to look no matter how that comment gets made?
Right.
Okay.
So the rejection comment is a little different than an actual comment on the business process. The rejection comment are instructions for the person that receives that task so that they know what they need to do to fix whatever problem there was. So once they do that, it comes out through email. It says, hey, by the way, so whatever I put in as a reason for the rejection, that's just instructions to that particular person. If you want it to be set as something more general, apply it as a comment to the business process so that everybody can see it. But it still can be kept in the history. So the business process history will keep track of those rejections and the comments for that rejection. So if you've gone through 5 rejections and you're going back and say, John, can you, sorry, John, Bob, can you do this? And he says, Bob, you didn't do this. Bob, when are you going to get this done? And it keeps going back and forth. Obviously, you're going to say, there's a problem here with Bob, okay? Because Bob's not doing his job. So that's kind of the reason why that's going to be managed in the business process history. And it keeps track, it's basically not a trail. It keeps keeping track of when the task is received, when it's approved, when it's rejected, and when the process is completed in its entirety.
So as far as when it gets to me, for example, where I'm bringing in a whole new team of people who need to have eyes on this, I'm kind of confused about how, so engineering did their piece, it's now gone to, it's just been announced, right? And then, am I gonna see all the comments that have happened from day one till?
On that business process, yes.
Okay, okay. I need to formulate my question. I need to stew on that then.
Okay. All right.
So I think she's probably getting to the difference between a comment and a reason.
Right.
Right? Where in this particular application, the last thing that we want to have in a business process is a chat history.
Yes.
Of people bickering back and forth, and are you going to get this done? This is wrong, blah, 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 blah.
Flaming is intolerable, right? Something like that, right?
So kind of going back to the business process, like if there's a reason why it cannot move forward, then it needs to be managed there. And at that point, the notification goes out because something needs to be done rather than just dropping this thing sucks or whatever.
Yeah. So and
Bob's no longer here, dude.
Yeah. So Mike brought up a good point. So if something happens where you cannot approve your task, there's something going on. For example, maybe you're waiting for some outside information from somebody, and you've now sat on the thing for a week, and it's no fault of your own. Well, It's not because, it's not, you're gonna say, well, I'm just waiting here. But if you put the comment in there, say, look, I'm still, it's been 7 days, I've waited for so-and-so, they're not getting back to me, but this is the current status. At least there's a note in the system that tells you, people are not gonna come down in your case because you didn't get your job done there and say, okay, now I understand there's a delay. And especially like for the project managers or the product managers, they would be able to recognize that and say, okay, I think we need to do some follow-up on this, or maybe there's some escalation needs to be done. But at least if the information is in, if you note that on the business process, you're keeping track of the highlights and the lowlights. That's really the intent. Okay? So I highly recommend using the comments section on a business process to keep track of things as they occur. Major events or events that are detrimental to the progress of the business process. Okay?
Good point to break there, Brian.
What was that?
That's a good point to break.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, go ahead. We can stop. So,
hey, Brian, when we come back from break, can you kind of, at some point, can you go through the My Task page in a little bit of detail?
To describe it?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yep.
Okay, we'll take a 15-minute break. We'll be back here online at 10 minutes to the hour.
Business process workflows.
Uh-huh.
Are there automatic triggers as well as the manual? I mean, obviously we're seeing the manual triggers right now.
Right.
And so for autonomy, I could say when a comment is added to my notify everybody.
And there might be other ways of transforming that in the system. So when it's a comment that shares with an asshole, let's notify people. I say, does it have to happen inside the system? Doesn't necessarily, but obviously it's nice to inform added that as part of the functionality. Because again, having an email notification.
Right. It's clearly there.
Right, exactly. So it'd be nice to use that.
So for business processes, do they have automated triggers where we're waiting for something to happen in the system and then it kicks off when something changes?
Or simply one step moving to the next one. Something's completed, you can do something else.
So they'll have automated steps further in the process, but not necessarily automated, but like automatic triggers.
Trigger, yeah.
That a workflow kicks off when something happens in the system.
Yeah, and we can have that possibility one process trigger another process, so it has to stop something else. And for challenge, it's just a continuation. It's something completed, and then it moves on to the next. That's part of the rule of law. I'm not trying to be attacking that too much because I don't know a lot of the functionalities now. I'm much more used to the on-campus loads of people doing it. I love so I try to be very much cautious of what I talk about there and sure I was told you can't have another option.
Okay. Anytime you go into workflows, I'd be super interested in adding to that.
Yep, exactly.
I'm very interested in it.
Process-driven stuff is amazing, and that's why I highlight PLM and not PDM. Like the life cycle, that is so critical because data is just sits there until you do something with it. But if you're doing a project, you just say, I'm going to go do some stuff. You get to have a track. Yep, not a problem.
Mine is working. I have a image.
Normally when I go to promote it's like this.
Right, where you have like for example, you want to do for example, even personal. It's like make a I really don't think about it. I think it's just that really easy. But it's actually there. So next month or so, or not have that red flow. What is there? It's called practice.
Out of my engineering brain, it's going to
It's something we specify that you buy versus, by the way, I have this custom crafted mustard, this exact questions aren't right. That's required in the business useful or it doesn't require special.
But that's not a form fit function.
Nope. I know. Whatever. Yeah. It was just that was something that you might really
like a lot of quality is built on so it can hold in file. It can only open PDF files natively. Everything else is going to be C. And so, because I know that we have a lot of issues with that. We got certs that are this is not going to be a solution to that. But CMM would be so it's so the other option will be most feature but this will be I gotta go. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Actually, we'll just talking about the process.
Fired up?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I am. Are you?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like that. Design stuff, approval process and stuff. That's how I started thinking. I'm like, can you do parallel
I don't even know
side tasks within a section? Because most like the workflow he shows, right, is sequential. A has to go down to full B, right? Can you have an A and then B1, B2, B3 that's parallel or even sequential, right? Where A, B, C can do, it doesn't matter. Or you need to have A1 for B1, A1 for A2.
They've done the workaround there.
Just depending on how the work goes.
And if they something they go through all this work, actually develop these programs for these files. All this too. To the system.
Let's see.
So that it becomes a legacy.
There are tasks, the status, but I'm not sure exactly what workflow requires.
Well, we just updated
Fires,
the
this and this, and before this is all done, then we can move on. So.
Then when he was doing that, he created the sum assembly. Yeah.
So then we should be.
He's referencing ICs. That's my so he's like, oh, making a subset. I'm like, no, just using two ICs.
I'm out of the terminology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's taking two ICs, going to one part.
Because you work with PLM a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we call it PDC. So that's why I was thinking that part data vault that he was talking about.
Yeah.
Was what I was calling part data characters. So it was the module.
So to be able to upload part of the results. And I'll put it with this.
So when I see masks, right, talking about masks,
that'd be huge, right? If we have tools programs, I can load up.
Because for our part, this was the first line of the
So maybe that was
part.
we
tried to send it.
So,
or no, it was like.
well, I mean,
it was whether it was CPI or tray or the package.
way too complicated.
It's one of those things like I've glanced at it, I'm like, yeah, this would be like 6 months for me to get comfortable with it.
I'm starting to get very comfortable with starting
Very higher. I'm trying to make that item
which they've found quite a lot of.
But it took them on.
Because I'm on 1001 now.
A lot of the stuff like he's showing, I'm looking at the item, the things he's looking at. But then you start to create a but then I didn't want to touch them. Well, yeah, because that's what happened with Carl, right? Oh, you're Carl's whatever they're on.
I was trying to follow along also, but I said, oh, just get out of case I miss a bunch of tissues. Trying to drill down and see what's going on.
He tries to prove something.
Yeah.
After a few hours, I started getting
You're not sick, are you?
No, I've just had this cough for 3.5 months.
Really?
Yeah. I got sick after like the day before Thanksgiving, and I've had the cough since. Yeah.
Like the RSV, respiratory, whatever.
That's got to be what it is. And then yeah, like people are saying that with this particular strain, it's just this like post-nasal drip that just makes you cough. That just doesn't go away. And I'm on month 3.
That's why I was just reading about what somebody in Central Oregon that got the plague. They're talking about like headache and lymph nodes, and I'm like, I was out like a week and a half ago, and my lymph nodes got swollen and like irritated my throat, and I had body aches, and I was like, what the heck is going on?
Dude.
And then I see that, I'm like, what? Did I just have the like? What the heck is going on?
This season has just been so weird. But yeah, we got all of us got sick, my family, and then my cough has just been like refuses to go away.
I just moved up from Arizona, right? And I hadn't been sick since late 2019.
Yeah.
Moved up here in October, and I've been sick twice now. Like, so it's
yeah.
I'm
This
like,
season
just
just
around,
sucks.
Am I around people that are like people that are have the flu up here?
No, I think it's just the particular season. This season is just really stinking brutal, and I think everybody's immune system. This is probably still ripple effect of COVID, where everybody isolated for 2 years, and then now our immune system is just not as robust as.
Yeah, I literally sat at home.
Yeah.
Only time I left was go to the grocery store.
Yep. So I would say most likely that's probably what's going on, and this is just. But yeah, I would pay a lot for this thing to go away. I've been
right. It's new normal, right? You just
no, yeah, it's to the point where I don't even necessarily notice it. It's just I've been coughing for 3 months. No other symptoms. That's it. Yeah.
Yep. I just wanted to
So I'll show you what
Hello?
Okay,
everyone. All right. All right, class.
Give me 1 second. Let me restart the video here.
Okay. All right. So now that we've had this opportunity kind of to kind of understand what the business process kind of does a little bit, some of the mechanics, then what I'm going to do is, so Mike requested that I go ahead and show what is involved with a task. So looking at the tasks here, then let's go ahead and, so when you receive a task, let me just clear out my filter here, then you could set this as your home page as you log into LN, okay? It can just become your what you see. Or you could set it as like a favorite in PLM, so you can select it from your home page as well. So obviously I'm not trying to dictate too much, but that's, again, you have your LN favorites, you have your LN bookmarks you frequently use, so you can use any one of those three to help you kind of navigate a little bit better Obviously, the young guys can describe that more. But the way I use it, you see, I have my LN links here, and then I have my PLM links here, and then I have my admin links down underneath here as well. So I kind of split those out between those three. So if you want to or not, that's completely up to you. This is nothing, I'm not even saying this is even best practice. This is just something I do. Okay? So obviously I have the most common, my most common sessions that I would use are going to be on this under my PLM stuff. So that's why I have a lot of this stuff here. So it's easy, so I don't have to go back to the navigation, because again, I get lost in that menu of stuff to try to figure out where things are located. So that's why I use this. So going back to my tasks then, so this is where you have the ability to see a lot of your, so let's talk about some of these things and what they actually mean. So priority means absolutely nothing. I shouldn't say that. What it means is that it's a standard field in the system, and if you want to use it for something important, you can. It exists, and it may need something. And what we can do is we can actually have conditions in the system that if you were to select urgent, it can do certain things to the business process that if you selected medium or low, it won't do, or vice versa. Again, the reason why is because the conditions, so I was just talking to Peter a little about this morning, and he was saying, well, what happens if I have some documentation that is specific? What was some of the examples you gave me? You're saying, work instructions,
compliance documents,
So if you have something like
files.
that, so if there's something that you're looking at and you say, okay, this is going to go to an approval process, but each approval process is slightly different, then what you do is you would say, okay, I'm going to set up a document type, and in that document type, if I select one document, it's going to change the business process so that it conforms to the type of business process I'm trying to produce. And so it's instantaneous. It just happens in the background. Unfortunately, it does require some configuration to get that to work. So that again, there's the flip side. You have to figure out what you do with that. Okay, so but really again, the business process type is a grouping that allows you to select a related business processes. Like for example, obviously we have the ones that say ECO, and then underneath ECO we have a business process called ECO because that's what they are. And the business process, where's the template? Do I have the template here? No, I don't. So the template would then be the ECO template. So it's for ease of use when you're going to select your business process as a new business process. You select your type, because you don't want to see the MPI stuff. You don't want to see the ECR. You want to see specifically the ECO business processes. Now, there might be several in there, and we actually do have several in the system. So we'll actually be going through that very shortly. But that's to help to identify that. But even then, when you are looking at a task that comes through, what's the first and foremost thing you see? And the first and foremost thing you see is that business process name. Okay, that ID. So if you have a prefix for the type, the business process type in the actual name, then you know immediately at least kind of where I'm going. You see MPI, you say, oh, obviously this is new product production. You see ECO, you're like, okay, obviously this is standard during change. Yes, Amy?
Just a quick question. I know templates have gotten a little unruly in our current system. Is that going to be locked down so only certain people or admins can create templates?
And the answer is yes.
Okay.
So, because, the people that can create the templates are not going to be anybody. This will definitely be tracked by somebody.
Okay.
Felicia.
Okay.
but somebody's going to be in charge of that. Okay, it's not just anybody. So and the reason why is because obviously we want to, and again, for the most part, the heavy lifting will be done during this project, because before go live, we're going to want to have all this stuff figured out. We don't ever want to try to say, well, we have some of them, but the other ones we don't really know. No, let's get them done now. And that's why there's so much emphasis, if you will, on the process as opposed to the process as opposed to maybe You don't see me talking a lot about the data just yet because we're going to be dealing with that after CRP1, 2. That's really what it is. So, but again, that will be our process. That's going to be the intent of when we get back to the config checklist, which of course is my big mantra that I use at the very beginning of the project. So,
good question, Brian.
Question. Yep.
So everything that is appearing on this My Tasks thing, right? When we were going through the demo sessions, there was a user profile dashboard, and I presume, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but these tasks can be then linked to a user dashboard that says you have 13 PLM tasks. Is that true?
Yes. You reminded me, Mike. Let me go back to my. I'm gonna have to look this up here. I believe it is. No. All right. Without digging and trying to find stuff. Actually, let me just check one more place here. Yeah, I think this is what you're talking about, right? Like a dashboard?
No, it's more like user specific. So like when they log into LN and land on their home page, it's something like a tile that says you have 13 PLM tasks.
Oh, okay.
Like the last thing that I want as a process manager is people relying on email to do work content. Because that's death by 1,000 emails.
And I believe that might be a mingle thing where it's a widget on your home screen before you even get to LN, which basically goes into your different systems and says extract out this information and you can look at it from here.
Okay.
I believe that's the case, but mingle is kind of going bye-bye too, so we're moving on to something else.
So
yes.
TBD.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. So, all right. So going back to and close down this stuff. So back to my tasks. Then okay. So a lot of this is just some description information. You can see underneath the activity description. You can see it as a facilitator completes analysis. So you can see that we have spent some time in creating, and it's a little bit hard to read, but we have this. This is what would appear on the actual on the email notification to indicate what it is you need to do for that particular task. So there's several more that we would have to fill out, but that's the thing that we're working on now as well. Okay. Arrival date and end date, there's just kind of hard to see, but the arrival date and then there was actually an exit date here exactly. So this would be whenever that's completed, again for metric purposes. So this can be a little bit overboard with respect to the amount of data that's being shown, and we could probably come in this and say at a later date we could say, you know what, we really want to pare this down to only the bare necessities that we need. We don't necessarily want to see every single thing the system wants to give us. We could definitely work on that. Okay. So, all right, because we are already 11 o'clock Pacific time and we need to get moving, I wanted to go back to my end-to-end testing really. So we've been able to receive a task. We launched the business process, we received the task, we approved items, we didn't approve documents, but obviously it's kind of the same process. And we did approve the task, we rejected the task, we provided a rejection reason. So you can see there's several other things, and I don't want to go through everything. I just wanted to be able to provide this as part of the Rioli testing capabilities so that when we do our testing later on, this becomes kind of the way we check the system to make sure that we can do what we want, without being too specific on the ECO or on the NPI, because really at the end of the day, from a PLM perspective, it doesn't care which one it is. It just says, if you have a task, what can you do with that task? That's really what it's about. Okay? If you have a business process, what can you do with that business process? And that's why this is a little bit agnostic with respect to the actual functionality and not quite so specific on each individual process. Okay? Any comments or questions? All right, continue on. No. Okay. All right. So shifting now, we're going to go back to we'll go to the Battleship ECO. I was hoping to be able to get to the MPI process, but the MPI process pretty much is reduced battleship ECO for the most part. And it says, and of course, my battleship now is kind of a misnomer. But let's go ahead and look at that. And let me go ahead. Actually, so we're going to start with the ECR. So what I'm going to do now is this is now Biamp specific. This is where we're actually doing something that we've come up with during our design sessions. So the first thing we do is we go to ECLN, our course of PLM, and we're going to go ahead and open up. I'm going to close my task for just now, and let's go back to my business process. Let's close the other one that was I used for my test, and I want to go ahead and create a new ECR. So I'm going to go ahead and select the business process type, ECR, and I'm going to go ahead with the workflow template as ECR. And for ease of use, I'm actually going to label this ECR, ECR-000005, just for number. And the description, I'm going to call it CRP1. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go ahead and click Save. All right, now I've created it. I'm going to immediately launch this. And the only reason why is because I know my first task, if we look at our references, is going to be coming back to the originator, which is me. So I have the first task. You can see this is a massive process, very complex. I'm being facetious, but at the same time, what do you need? This is what we did. We sat and thought about it and said, what are we really trying to do with the ECR process? All we want to do is have it sent to a subject matter expert who will review it and confirm if it even makes sense, right? And if we need to add more tasks, well, we can add more tasks at the end if we need to. But at this point, we've identified as that is the key, that's the critical part of what an ECR process is. So obviously it comes back to me just for my own sanity check to review to make sure things are good, add whatever I need. So let me go ahead and add, and we'll go back and add another item here. So let's go ahead and go to, and only because we have that other one locked to the other business process, and I'm not going to go try to get that thing. Let's just go create a new one, and I'm just going to save this, and we'll just call this CRP ECR. If I can type here. All right, CRP ECO. Just because then in part, I'll just call this part. Okay, so save that. It's actually grab that number, that 123, because that's my default number. So it'll be grab the next number for 123, number 9. My rev starts with A. So that's going to be my rev. It's in a draft state. Good. Everything's good. We'll leave this for now. I'm not going to try to throw on any files or documents or anything like that at this point. Let's just get the bus on the road and let's get the bus moving. Okay. And one passenger. Okay. He paid. Okay. So let's go ahead and I'm going to close that and close that and back to my workflow. And let's go ahead and say link my item. So go here. Oops. Wrong one. I don't want that. That's not. Sorry. So my comments section. Let's go back to items. So new link. And I look up my 1230009. Pull that one in. We'll save that. And so I can now see my task. So we go to my tasks. And we now have ECO 0009, which is this one. So let's go ahead and put ECO in here just to narrow that down a little bit. And let's go open this. And actually, was it 9? Doesn't seem to be the right one. Hang on. Was it 5? Oops, did I make a mistake? Sorry. Thank you. That's right, because I manually typed it in. That's right. Thanks for reminding me. Okay, so let's go back here to 5. Or ECO, let's go back to ECO 5. This one. Here we go. Oh, yeah, that's the CRP1, duh. That's right. This filter on that. Okay, so I have my task here. Oh, that's my business process. So my tasks, and let's just go to so CRP1. Okay, so open my task, and just to show the other way of doing things, instead of me approving my item like I would typically do, I'm just going to go to actions. I'm just going to go ahead and say approve task with attachments, and that's a one-click shop. So it moved on to 0, 1, 0. And Mike was he asked me a question during our design session. He said, why do you put numbers at the beginning? Well, it's mostly because of the fact that the task is a text field, and for you to be able to kind of get a better feel for where in chronological order you are when you receive your task and you see something that says 101 or 005, 010 or something like that, you know it's at the beginning of the process. You receive something that's 190 or 010 or something like that, then you know that's way downstream on that process. So it's just a quick check, as well as when you sort on your tasks, because if I go back to my tasks here, now if I go to actions, or let's see, hang on, but before I do that, okay. So I can say all tasks, or I can say current tasks, my failed tasks. You can see there's a lot of ways of seeing the task, because the tasks that I'm looking at right now are just strictly assigned to me. But the business process has 20, 30 tasks, who knows how many. And maybe there's something down the road that I have to say, oh, that's right, I think I need to go skip that task because it's not necessary now. Midstream, the system will allow you to make those changes, as long as you have the ability to make changes to tasks, obviously. But that's kind of where, again, the system is not trying to be so rigid. It just says this is the template, you apply the template, then you make changes to your new business process. But the template gives you the basic roadmap. That's what it is, okay? So that's why the numbering helps to kind of clarify. So if I look at if I would look at all the tasks, then you see that it comes up with a huge list. And what I would do here in this case is, if I would have to go filter to find the task that I'm looking for that I may want to modify. It's still, it can be a little bit difficult to do, but at the same time, as long as you understand the way the system works, it does become somewhat easy to understand after some practice, so to speak. Okay, so that's all tasks. All right. So back here, now that I've gone through this thing, is now on to the next step. So the SME now looks at this thing. Obviously, the SME now has the ability to either say, this looks good, or doesn't look good. So what I'm going to do is say, okay, let's say the subject matter expert looks at it, they like it, they think it's a pretty good idea. So they go in, and I'm just going to select this. I believe I have the capability of saying approve task with attachment. So you can see I'm doing it a little bit different this time. I'm not actually looking at the actual task itself. I'm doing it from this screen as well. So there's different ways of doing this. Pick and choose the way you want to do it. Obviously it doesn't make that much difference. So now it's gone. So what happened? The business process was able to complete. It reached the end of the task list, and it's done. So if we go back to our business process overview and we refresh here, we will see that this now is going to be green. It's completed. Okay? What does that mean? At least from what we were discussing, this means now that the ECR was approved. Now, we had quite a bit of discussion about, well, what does that mean? What is the next step? And we said that ECR, for the most part, is the springboard, is the starting point for an ECO or an MPI or pretty much anything else, right? Because that's there's the request. So this is the request. The ECR is the request, and what you do with that request now depends on the subject matter expert. They decide what the next steps are. Okay? So they say, well, you know what? I think this now merits the ECO, so let's put this on an ECO. So the way that we did this, and this is a manual process, that would be another one of our gaps that we kind of identified, it'd be really cool if we could just have this thing just kick off a new ECO, kind of what Peter was asking. So if we just have it kick off a new ECO, everything's fine. It just links the stuff that was already on it and moves forward. So there's no real loss of data, nor does anybody have to do anything. for the time being, because of the way things are set up, then what I would do is I would actually come into this business process. So I'm going to go in here, open this up, and then from here, and let me go back to really for a second here. I just have to remember. Back to my tasks, and we will see that create ECR business process, add reason and impact. Oh, I didn't do that, sorry. Link items, we linked items, add a comment. We didn't add comments, but we've done that already. So add a file, didn't add a file, I could at least show that, right? Now it's completed, so it's a little bit difficult. All right, we'll do that in just a second. So, save ECR, launch ECR, we did that. SME receives task notification. Well, obviously can't do that just yet. They review the ECR request, they approve the ECR process, and it goes through. But then we could say, then I said, of course, they could reject it. They could send out email notifications to stakeholders. We thought that might be a possibility too. And of course, it's now at a status of complete. So for the most part, we kind of got through most of these things here. Let me go back to, let's close that now. And let's go to the next, which is launch the Battleship ECO. So in here, then I want to copy the ECO workflow from the ECR workflow. So that's what I was going to, so that's why I had to open up Really to help myself to keep track of this. So from here, I'm going to go in and select duplicate business process. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ECR number that's going to be the number that I'm copying from, and I'm going to drop that into the new number, which is a slight modification. I'm just going to change that to an ECO, and thinking I might have already used this number. Ooh, that might be a problem. So we will try this, and you see that it recognizes the fact that it has an item linked to it, so it attaches the item to that new business process. That is no problem because the other one's already complete, so it can move forward. We'll talk about maybe sometime in the future not about locking items and locking documents, things like that too. So there's exclusive rights to certain business processes. So I'm going to try this and let's see what it does. It probably will give me problems if I can complain about it. Okay, so it was happy. So I successfully copied to ECO 0005. You want to copy another one? No, I do not. So that's that. Now I have this ECO. So now, but you see that the business process type is still an ECR. So this is where when we looked at it, and I scratched my head about this a little bit. I was like, how can I make this work? So I said, well, if I now have this business process before it has been launched, I can still make changes to it. So that's the key. It has been created, but it has not been launched. So I'm going to come in here and select ECO, and I'm going to select from the list here my Battleship ECO process and save. And how can I confirm that this actually worked, that I actually got the new process? Is I go to my references to my business process workflow and I confirm it's not 2 steps. It's a lot more. And this is the Battleship ECO process with some modifications. So you can see there is a lot more stuff that goes on here now. Okay, this is what we consider the ECO process. So that's the way we get around this. So back to my Really thing. So you see link items, so it linked it automatically. Link documents, I didn't link a document actually specifically. Modify the ECO details. Oh, I can modify it if I need to. So I can come back in here and say, okay, based on my information here, go to my business process. Of course, I have my detailed description. I can see all my default stuff. I can fill out something in here specific for this ECO process. Okay, so I'll add that information if I wanted to. And then I'll leave my workflow open only because I want to see when we launch that we should have a blue dot there. Back to the business process and actions and launch. Okay, so I'm missing an assignment. That's right. I made some changes to this template last Friday, and I forgot to add an assignment. So the way the system works is that the template, we set up the template with the task structure being that it has one task leading to another or too many, but the intent is that you have a single bullet. Open up the workflow again. So you see it starts with this dot right there. So that dot here is the beginning of the process, and the process goes through. You can see there's smaller dots along the way, but those dots are just simply junction points. That's all they are. They're just connectors. But at the very end of the process, the intent is that, these best practices, is that you actually end with a large black dot. That's the intent, okay? So as long as they can all deviate, but as long as they all come back in, everybody's happy. All right. So I missed one of my tasks, which I think was 110. So if I go to 110, which is right, change analyst right here, and I can see that the assigned user is blank. So I need to fix my template, but since I've already used my template when I set up this business process, I'm just going to go in and say edit, assign user, assign myself, save. And now if I go back and relaunch, I will cross my fingers that I didn't have any others that are missed. So business process, and let's go ahead and launch again. And another one there. Well, I'm just going to click through these. Hang on a second, because I did, like I say, did make some changes recently. So here, there's assignments, no assignment. Okay, so change that to. And if I go through the other ones as well, that's good, good, good. All right, so it looks pretty good. Again, everything is assigned to me for the most part, because that way I don't, if I assign it to somebody else, we stop the process because we can't continue on. I can't log in as anybody else.
If you marked it complete, it takes it to the very end.
Yes. So if you instead of saying, or if you click complete on the business process, it just says complete, no matter what's going on. So it could be rejected, it could be in some weird status, but the minute you hit complete, it's done. But the problem is it makes it sound like it was successful all the way through the process. So you lose a lot of, it's like you read the last page of the novel for the whodunit, right? You missed all the deductions. So that's why, and that's not really smart. So we typically remove that as well from the business process options so that people cannot do that. Cancel is, again, that's allowable because let's say you're starting a change and you're moving along and somebody's like, well, wait a second. We suddenly have, that somebody changed their mind, we're not going to do this.
Or there's another one out there.
Or there was another change that was requested, and it's like, well, why don't we just piggyback the two? We'll put them all together, and I'll link the cancel one back with the other one. Exactly. So that's really the way you can get around some of this stuff. That's why there's a myriad of ways that you can do things based on your requirements. The situation is really what dictates how you do these processes. The intent is that you have the template set up, you have your basic flows set up, but then how you use those or when you use those is really up to you. It's really up to the business and how you put those into practice. Anyway, all right, I've said enough. So I think I've got that fixed now. Let's go back to my process and let's go ahead and hopefully I'll cross my fingers that I got this thing this time. So launch. And I think I liked it this time. Okay, so in progress. All right, yay. Okay, so we're now moving along. Back to my workflow, and we see that if I go back to the beginning and refresh, then we see that we have our blue dot. Okay, so I think that for the most part, as you begin to see that, I want to get to this part here because I want us to see, okay, so let's talk about now the Biamp process, okay? So originator, first guy, that's usually the SME because they're usually the ones that launch the process. So they're the originator, they receive the task, they confirm it looks good, they would go into their tasks, of course, and let's close that one. And refresh here, and I think I need to get rid of CRP. Oh no, CRP would still be good. So refresh. Yep. Okay, good. So again, I'm going to go in this one, and we're going to make this rather quick here. Actions, approve task. It moves on to the next one. You can see it goes to, let's refresh, and it says resource assign. So that's the new step. So if you look at the workflow, it's going to be up to this step here, refresh. And so we went from user step to group step. So let's go back to my tasks. And I'm going to go ahead and select it, actions, take task, because I have to, because it is group task. And now I'm going to go ahead and approve task with attachments. And now we have 7 tasks. So we refresh here and we see 7 blue dots. So this is where you start to really take advantage of these concurrent tasks. What's the intent of this? Well, we have change analyst, I think is in there. We have, I think there's, I can't remember all the names we have here.
So would you call this parallel approvals within a sequential workflow?
Yeah, well, these are not the approvals. These are the reviews. So this is like the proposed change. So the SME looked at it, they said, yeah, I think this might be worth it. We probably need to do this. But now it goes through all of the different departments to review and confirm that this actually does make sense. Or if there's something that needs to be flagged, or something that needs to be seen, or maybe before we just immediately just assume that everything is fantastic, right? So this is really to confirm, because it's basically your control board, right? Your change control board is looking at this thing and saying, okay, does this make sense, right? That's really what it is. And of course, with each one of these things, then of course, this will not move on to the next step. So it will not continue forward until every step has been approved. So I have to go into each one of these and take this one, and this is just a user task, so actions, approve task, and you'll see these dropping off. And if I go in here and look at it here, so this is user task, so approve task, attachments, and close that. And so if I go back to my business process workflow and I refresh here, you're going to start to see blue dots disappearing. Because as those processes, as those tasks are completed, then it says, okay, I'm not waiting on this one anymore. I don't need it because it's been approved. But I am waiting on the other ones that are still active. So again, as long as I continue to complete those tasks here, let's refresh here because there's the one that's now gone. So again,
did you highlight them all and approve?
Hypothetically
speaking,
I'll try. I'll try. Sure, let's go and try it. I mean, it seems like it's enabled, so I can try it. Yeah. So one of this is a group task. So I have to take the task first. So actions, take task, and then if I highlight that one. Now, I don't see where this would ever be done.
Yeah. Okay,
because this is really, that's very abnormal because we would be receiving 15 tasks at the same time and say, oh, I'm going to approve all my tasks at the same. No. At least it shouldn't. That's not the idea, okay? So approve tasks with attachments, and there they go. Yeah, so technically it is possible. Practically, no. So again, now that we've done those two, again, back to our workflow. We refresh and we see that we have 2 left, one there and one there. So back to my tasks, and let's go ahead and take the task, approve task with attachments, and of course now SME engineering review is the last one. So if we look here, there, that's not the wrong one, it's one at the bottom, so there, and that's the last one. So again, it's still waiting for that. Now, how is this beneficial? Again, instead of looking at this thing as a negative, we're going to say, what does this mean? You can see where the laggards are. You can see where the people are that are slowing up the process, right? Not necessarily go bash them, but at the same time, you can say, okay, obviously do we need to do something here? Is there some way that we can improve the process? There's maybe some advanced notification where maybe they should look at this first and say, yes, this looks good. Okay, now everybody else can look at it. I don't know. That's what I say. The process is not, there's endless possibilities with the process. So is it a good process or a bad process? That's to be determined. There's no perfect process. That's the problem. There's always improvements that you can make.
Is there a delinquency reminder?
Good question. So if, for example, let's assume that we have this task right here. Let's go back to my tasks.
What was the question?
Oh, sorry. So the task is, does there a delinquency reminder on the process task? So let me look at this and again, in the essence of time, I didn't necessarily want to go through everything, but since the question is raised, let's look at this. Let me go back to my workflow actually. So let's go to this one and open this up. And if you notice down near the bottom, you see it says maximum duration in hours. And I can open this up and I could say how long this task is going to stay in your inbox until you receive a notification telling you you need to get your stuff done, okay? You need to get moving, okay? When it expires, you can have notifications be sent to a superior or a direct report or somebody else that says, so-and-so is not completing their task. And it can be repetitive too, Corey, to your point. It can be repetitive.
What do those superiors do? Nothing. You've been there.
So, but that, yes, there is the capability of you setting a what they call a task expiration in PLM terms. Okay, so back to my task then, and I'll go ahead and say approve task with attachments, and forgot to take it. So, like I say, take the task and approve task, and now we go back to the business process workflow. Yep, sorry.
Can I ask a quick question about
Sure.
that? So as far as the timeline goes, certain tasks are going to, depending on the amount of products that are being looked at, whatnot, it's going to be the same task every time, but different time frame, right?
Time links, right?
Yeah. So how does that work within?
You don't have to. This is not something. It's a requirement. It's something that's optional. And if you want to use your task, if you say no, we have to use these, then on a case-by-case basis, you would go in and say, I want to set this for 2 hours, this one for 3 days.
Okay, so we can change it as needed.
Absolutely, yeah. Within the business process, that's why the template gives you the basic structure. Then on an individual business process, you can change anything on that. So there's nothing locked into place that says you have to stay with this.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we're moving along then, we refresh here, and we will see that it is now on to what I call 013 plan prep. So this is the next one, and you can see that it's going to be a group task. So again, just zipping through these things, you can see where this is where, then you have like, I think, if I remember correctly, that's a facilitator. So the facilitator looks at this and says, okay, now I'm going to speak from more of a business perspective. So the facilitator looks at it and says, okay, everybody came in here, maybe supplied some comments on the business process, maybe they said something about it, fine, let's review. Maybe somebody rejected, maybe somebody sent it back to the beginning and said, hey, no, we need to get this. Okay, but regardless, at some point, everybody approves their task. Basically, cannot move forward until everybody approves. Once everybody does, then the comments can be reviewed, right? What's going on? Does this require, and what we decided from the PLM design group was we said, we don't want people to cancel the business process. If one of the seven, if one of the seven say, I don't like this, we said, we don't want to tell them that they make the decision to cancel. No, we just say, add your comment, approve your task, and let the decision be made afterwards. As far as once the the aggregate has been provided, then you can make your determination as to what you want to do. So that's kind of the way we saw it. Okay, right, Kyle? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because again, once there's enough discussion about something, now does it require you to have to do everything inside the system? No. If you have a change control board and you go into a meeting and you talk about it there, fine, do it there. But regardless, at some point somebody has to say, okay, we'll approve the task and now we'll move forward. Again, that's what I say. The activities don't have to occur in PLM. They just have to occur. And then somebody just says, okay, they were done. It was completed, inside or outside the system. Doesn't matter. Okay? All right.
Brian, just time took about 30 minutes.
Yep. We're cruising now. We're cruising. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and go back to approve this task then. And we'll take it. Approve. And, oh, that's right. Okay. So, all right. Sorry. I just clicked. I misclicked. Let me open this up and just explain something real quick. Okay. So what I did was I said approve task, and I did not do the approve task with attachments. So because I didn't have a response here, so I went and said approve task. And my error came up. It told me you have an item that has not been approved. You need to approve the item before you can approve your task. Of course, I've been going through this whole thing doing approve task with attachments, which basically bypasses that check. But this time I missed it, and so there I came up with this error. So I would have to do approve, and once it approves, then I go and do this. But again, I do this and nothing happens. It doesn't do anything. So there's some glitch in the system right now. That's the bug we're working on. So I still can do approve tasks with attachments, and it's fine. Still good. Okay, so now if I go back to my workflow, I think I am at design 01, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, not quite. Engineering manager review. Okay, so the manager reviews it, says, okay, who am I going to assign the next task to, right? That's one way to do it. Again, I'm not trying to tell Kyle what his job. No, I'm just giving him the tools that he can select from. That's all. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back here and let's take the task, approve, and now we should be on to design 01. So, all right. So our understanding for this piece here, let me get my little pointer thing. So what we said is, if you notice, we have some skip steps down here. These are the purple steps. So these are not active steps by default. They're actually skipped. What they are, though, is there's a check-in step, there is a send to ERP, and then there's a facilitator review. It's kind of hard to read, I know, sorry. But that's what those are. With the intent, if the engineer realizes there's some log lead parts that need to be sent to the system for a reason, we can activate that sub-process within the system and allow that to send information. Because he can then approve his task, it'll kick these off here, and as well, he'll receive his task back and do that. So there's no delay, and the information goes up. And then the facilitator, when they receive their task, they go in and check LN, make sure their items are there. They can do their demand planning, whatever the situation may be, and then the engineer just continues on with their design. That's really what it's about. Okay. All right. So that's kind of where you can use the battleship approach to just include a bunch of stuff in there and apply or skip as needed. But there are obviously, I'm trying to push for other ways. Okay. Anyway,
Brian,
go ahead.
As we're working through some of this, there are different deliverables expected with the various steps, and we've outlined some of the tasks and the notes and said, hey, this is what this step is about, do this, do this, do this. But those deliverables many times get added to either the ECO or the items on the ECO, items related to the ECO. Can the workflow check that those deliverables have been submitted before the step continues on, as opposed to someone clicking approve? Like, say you're at the design phase, I don't think this is exactly the right step, but you could have a list of items on your ECO and be like, well, I'm going to say I'm done with my design, and it's going to move on to the next bit of work. Okay, well, do I have all my required documents for that design?
Right. Building stuff.
Before it allows it to proceed, because so much of our struggles with these workflows is allowing exceptions or people not being clear about exceptions. And it's like, nope, it's not there. Sorry, you didn't include the drawing. You didn't include the expected file types. You shall not pass go. It's stuck until you get these things in. And here's the error message that comes back with the discrete. You didn't give me this and this. You did give me these other things, but you didn't give me these things that I'm expecting to see.
Right. And the system's not that smart. It's not going to be able to know whether you attach the documentation you were supposed to. It can have maybe a mandatory field that you have to fill out, but I've had other customers ask me, well, can I make it mandatory at this point in the process? Well, unfortunately, no, the system doesn't. It can't make it not mandatory at the beginning at creation, and then later on say, oh, now you need to add this information, and you can't go past go until you fill it out. The system's not that dynamic, okay? And the same thing with your items and documents. It doesn't require you to attach that information. That's why you have a rejection button. That's why you say, okay, somebody has to put their eyes on it. They look at it and they say, is the information, are my data in there as I expect it to be, or do I need to send this back to so-and-so and tell them they need to add it? Okay. So again, it's still a little bit archaic in the sense that we're kind of dealing with maybe 2000 technology type of thing. It's because it's not that smart is to be able to give you okay, you need to be able to attach something here, you need to attach something there, and you have to have this information. No, it is not quite that good. So to Tyler's point there. So yeah, it still requires review, it still requires confirmation. But I will tell you, I don't know how many customers I've worked with where, like say, I call them the configuration manager, I call them the traffic cop, because they're the ones that confirm that everything's good before it gets to the end. And they were the last ones to put their eyes on it. So I assume, like say, you have like the base data or something like that, they're gonna be the ones that say, okay, do I see what I need to have here? Because they're the ones that are gonna have to be inspecting it on the other side. They're gonna be looking at it on the LM side. So if they don't see what they want in PLM, they reject it back and say, look, I need to have this. And again, because it has not been checked in, because it has not been finalized, they have the capability to do that. Okay? So that's really the key, is where that's where you start the iterations again. Okay? Hopefully you reduce that, because as people become more familiarized and trained on what they're supposed to do. But again, now you're starting to track this kind of stuff, so when people don't do the job, it will come out, because you're now starting to capture that through the business process workflow itself. You going to say something, Tyler? Nah? Yeah, okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay. So like I say, at this point, when we are at here, then the actual design is being done. So again, this is the ECO process. So the design is confirmed. We actually said that the NPI process in PLM would start at this point as well. That's what we said, because we said all that stuff before, for the most part, is not necessary, because it's all being handled outside the system and is not necessary. That's all new product introduction. There's a whole other process that needs to be done for that. So this is really where we're starting to kick it off as far as the MPI is concerned. So the ECO, of course, is just a little bit longer. So once that is complete, then we go into, let's go ahead and approve task with attachments, not been assigned, of course. So sign, take it, and let's go back to our business process workflow, and we refresh here. So now it's in here. And again, it will not, you see that because these are purple, they've been skipped, they will not do anything. So it's not going to stop the process. So back here, and we'll take the task, and, oh, it's already been taken. Oh, that's nice. Yep, so go ahead and approve. I just took it. What do you mean? Oh, okay, now, okay. All right, approve task. So again, you're kind of seeing where this is becoming rather kind of mundane a little bit, because it's kind of the same stuff over and over and over again. But again, it's the intent. So we're assuming at this point, this is manufacturing DFM check. So we're assuming at this point that we've gone through the design. So design is complete. So manufacturing now looks at it and says, okay, does this make sense? Right? Does this really look like something that we should be doing? Right? Now, at this point, we had the prototyping process included in here. And then we decided, no, there's no need for that. So let's go ahead and pull that out and make that a separate process that could be kicked off really at the point of design completion to continue forward on its own process. And all we would want to do then is take so I come back here and I'm going to create a new one. And I'm going to call this my prototype. So prototype, I'm going to say PPT. Should I call it PPAP or something? But that's all right. Let's call it this. And I'm going into NPI. And if I look in my templates, then I have the oh no, sorry, not there. That's long lead time. Let's go back to ECO. Sorry. Yep, ECO. And in my ECO, I have my prototype process right there. So go ahead and save that. And I could probably try to kick it off, but it doesn't make much difference. All I want is it so that it exists. And then what I would do is go back to my business process for ECR 05, so my CRP, open that up. I'm going to go to my child business processes, and I'm going to go ahead and select. And let's just go put that PPT. And I'm going to go select that one and save. And the other thing I should do actually is go ahead and add my ECR 005 as well. So go into, look for, let's see, it was ECR. That was the complete one. So I go ahead and add that too. So save that. Okay, contain loops. Okay, my apologies. I just realized that this probably is already on. Yes, thank you. So actually, if I were to open up, and this is kind of what I wanted to get to. This is the aircraft approach. So if I go back to my ECR, and if I look at my child business processes, there's the EC. Oh, that's that one. I put this on the wrong one. I apologize. I don't want that there. Let's get rid of that. So that's the ECR. So let's get rid of that. So let's go ahead and remove that. So let's get rid of that one. And I want to go back to my ECO. So CRP1. And I should have my ECO right there. That's the one I want. So I'll take that. And child business processes. So I'm going to go ahead and add my PPT and add the ECR.
Question?
Yes.
I thought you created that ECO off of that ECR.
I did.
And so it doesn't automatically link when you take that ECR and then transfer?
It doesn't know that you're trying to make it a child. It doesn't know that immediately.
Okay.
So that's why it's good to, and that's why, but it's at the same time, because you're able to link them together, then you, and obviously using the same number, so the ECR 005, ECO 005, the intent, of course, is that you see one number, you know what the other one is, what the other one is, right? You don't even have to go look underneath your child business processes. But this is really the key, because then you can have a running list of all these sub-processes that are all actually related to that ECO. So that ECO still is like the aircraft carrier itself, but all these are the planes. These are the guys that are going off and doing these different missions or whatever they need to do, and they come back to roost at some point before you get back to port. That's the intent, at least. Okay? So that's why I've been pushing this quite a bit to try to get this as more common than make it the exception. Okay, so we got 15 minutes to go. Yeah, go ahead.
Those child business processes are only there as a reference, correct?
They are only referenced, so they're, and the question we had of course before was, they said, okay, do I have to complete all of these children processes before the master or before the parent? And the answer is no. There's no control telling you have to complete all of the ones below. So, but the intent would be,
It's a relationship.
it's a link, exactly. It's just a simple link. So there's no need to have that, but I would assume for the most part that would be the case. And when you get to the end of the ECO, you check to make sure if all the children are complete, or if they haven't completed. Okay, why? Oh, because we're still waiting. Oh, okay. As long as it's a valid reason, great, right? Go ahead, Kyle.
I was just going to say, this will allow us to link the ECR, link the report, build request. We could build an FAI process. All that stuff we link to one ECO that may just be something that's going through, and that might just be able to go back and go, what happened? Right now, we don't really have that. We could, I guess, but we don't. So, maybe.
So, yeah, we're kind of getting into that point, right? We do have the ability to do it today. We've had the ability to do it for the last 7 years. Nobody does it because it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't stop anything. It's only a reference point.
But
Nobody looks at it. No ECO gets held up for it. It is just a reference point.
and that's the point, is to have it all there so that they understand what we're talking about. But it's not all separate.
So
reference what you want.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. So what would I suggest in that scenario? I would say, okay. So the facilitator then gets to the end of the ECO and sees there's 3 open processes that are still not completed yet, and I'd say, okay, I'm not going to complete the ECO until this is done, and I'm going to put a comment in there saying I'm waiting on so and so because that process is not complete yet. I mean, I'm not trying to throw people under the bus, but at the same time, how do you keep track of this stuff? There has to be more training around this to allow that the process not drive the business. Let the business drive the process. Okay, so we got like 10 minutes to go here, something like that. So yeah, 10 minutes. Oh yeah, so yeah, it was off by a minute, huh? Oh yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and so back to our processes. Then again, we can see that. Okay, so I want to make sure that I get to the end of the engineering portion of this. So let's look back on the workflow. We see that we have a few more tasks here, and I just want to get through this. This is just the confirmation that things look good. Everybody's happy with the change. We did the original, which we go to the 7 tasks to approve the change request. Now not change request, the change order, and now we're going through the design. So now we want to confirm that this looks good, right? And it goes through the change analyst. We go through compliance review. We go through the QA portion and test engineering to, if that's necessary, be part of the process. So let's just go ahead and dive through these tasks then, and I'm going to actually pull this up here, and let's just go ahead, take task, approve task, take task. Just go right through these things really quickly. Just get to the end here. So approve, 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 and I think that might be the last of the 4. One more. Okay, so we have approve, and now we are into the final review, which is CO app. Now, so the change order, I guess change order approval, I suspect that's what it stands for, Mike, because that was your terminology we're using, right? Yeah, something like that, yeah. I can't read that, don't worry. So at this point, this is where somebody says, okay, are we complete? Did we get the process? Did the change go through as we expected? Did all the I's get dotted? Did all the T's get crossed, right? This is the confirmation. This is the last step. If this occurs, all right, let's go ahead and open up my business process and go to my items. And so let's go ahead and I'm going to now open up this item. And let's look at my details. And we see that it's in a draft state. So why is that important? Because now we are going to lock this down. Now we are done with the change. We're sending this off to ERP, okay? So back to my task, and I will go ahead and approve task with attachments. And it actually goes off my business process because it's now going through the check-in step. So I'm going to close this, go back to my item here, and if I refresh here, it had better say released and released to production. And that was sent to LN already. So how can I tell? If I go back to my business process workflow and we scroll back across here and I refresh here, it is now in the MD setup. It went through the check-in right here. It went through send to LN. It went through my notification step saying that, yay, everything is complete. And it moved on to operations for to start their portion of the ECO process. So let's take a look at that. So if we look at the item now, we see that, and I hope I'm going to cross my fingers. Let's see, this is the part. Okay, yeah, that was just the part. So if I go look for 1230009, so let's go back to my items. So look up items, and if I go do a search for 123 .00. I'm not even gonna try to guess how many zeros there are in there, but there it is. There's my P item. So my product item was production item was created. That is the power fluid. And on that note, right. Sorry. Yeah, John, you got okay.
It did look like there was more workflow though.
Oh no, we were done. That was absolutely perfect. No. Yeah, exactly. Then it goes into operations, and operations then takes over and starts to do their part. That's really what it is. And I should go back to really and start to show the steps that we went through. Yeah, but that's part of it. Yeah.
Okay, before I release you all for lunch, any other questions or comments for Brian?
I think we've done a good job with Brian trying to take what we have as our ECO process and get it embedded in the workflow. But I think there's some features around item signals or potentially control of MPI products and those components and how they could relate to parent assemblies that we haven't really been able to vet and realize the functionality of things that we don't have in our current business. So don't know how to log that as a gap or something, but it's okay. Yeah, because the item signals and early warnings around, hey, this part is under change and don't buy and things like that should be probably smaller test scenarios to make sure that Corey's team is getting the right information and buyers don't go purchase 1,000 things that we want to stop using in 2 days or something like that.
Right. So, and this is why what we just did with PLM 101. Okay, so this is basic stuff. This is nothing really complex. But yeah, definitely we want to talk about signal codes. We want to talk about disposition, advanced planning. There's so many pieces in here that we haven't even touched to allow things to occur that refine the process to make it better. And I think that's kind of what Tyler's saying here is to allow that to occur. Because obviously effectivity dates are critical to manage. Okay, yes, I just released an item, but is that item really effective today, right now that I just released it? No. We have stock we have to consume first, or we have to take care of something else. So that's something that will require additional review and still is part of the process. That's why the ECO is not really complete yet, because there's still several steps that need to be done before we consider full production, correct?
And so some of those optimizations might be from now to CRP3.
Correct.
I don't know exactly where to phase it. I also wonder about the prototype builds. We've highlighted that. That's a pretty, that's something that if there's good functionality on the LN side of it or the ERP side of it, it becomes very cross-functional from you working with Brian over to Korvacher and maybe Mahesh. I don't know if we want to try to pull that into the CRP2 in a few weeks, or if that would, because it's a pretty consistently exercised workflow on our side. And it was a late discovery that we hadn't covered it in our end-to-ends. So structurally, I don't know how you want to handle the project.
We need it. Yeah, we'll certainly capture that, and then I'll talk with the team and see how feasible it is for CRP2. Okay.
Yeah, and obviously we identified several processes that we thought were probably not considered standard, if you will, and we thought that would be something really neat if we were able to include as part of this whole process, because again, to improve the overall functional ability that the system has, as well as to manage business processes. That's really what it is. So that's really the intent.
Thanks, Tyler. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation. We're almost on the button, so well done. We'll now break for 45 minutes or so for lunch. The atrium. So those online, we'll be back online at 1:45 Pacific time. Thank you all.